Keep on jumping around ever.
I'm jumping around?
Well, when people come on, and I'm like, oh, that was her. Oh, she's
Oh.
gone.
Whenever you're ready.
Let's see where we're at. 7 o'clock. Just make sure people in and make me host, and then I'll make you co-host back.
You're our host.
Oh, I am. Want me to admit them all then?
I only see two. Oh, now they're appearing.
I'm ready, Supervisor.
We are ready?
I'm ready if everyone else is ready.
All right. I welcome everyone to the December 8th Rushtown Board meeting. Would you please join us for our salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll, please.
Oh, sorry, here.
Councilman Lang,
Here.
Councilman Wickerham,
Here.
Councilman Wilbur,
Here.
Supervisor QC.
Here. I will remove my mask momentarily while I read the announcements. The first announcement is you've probably local news channels that there is a county-wide program for the distribution of COVID tests. These are devices that will give you a reading and a test within 15 minutes. I just found out about this yesterday morning. The county apparently was dealing with the state on this late last week, and it's moving. We are to get our allotment of test devices tomorrow afternoon.
Do you know how many we're getting?
Yes, 1,900. The plan that we currently have for distribution is to have a Saturday and Sunday drive through the parking lot. I don't know if it'll be out here or out back, and hand them out to each car. There's going to be a residency requirement proof. And we'll have that plan in place by tomorrow night so that we can advertise it on Friday and have the residents know what to do, where to go, and what they can expect. Any questions on that? The second announcement I'd like to make is that the
Was paused. Not sure why, but I started it. Sorry,
That's okay.
Supervisor.
is the Rotary Sunshine Camp fundraiser called the Festival of Lights. That's a event where you take your family in your car or whoever you want to take, and you drive through the roads on the Sunshine Camp property, and they have light displays. I was there for the Halloween pumpkin display, and it was pretty impressive.
Holiday one's
So,
good too.
We went to the first weekend for the holiday lights. It's very nice.
and I hope that the holiday light show will be as impressive. I can't imagine it wouldn't be. We do have a public hearing at 7:15 PM. So why don't we try to get through the public comment period between now and then? Remember, there's a 3-minute rule for this first comment period. There's no two-way conversation. You state your opinion, you state your whatever, and have it at that. Please be respectful of the people around you. We'll start off with people in this room. Would anyone like to make a comment in this room? How about on Zoom?
Yes, Carl Ost would like to speak. Carl, if you would unmute yourself, give us your name and address, please, and turn your video on if you so choose.
Hello, Carl Ost, 100 Woodruff Road. I was just, as far as what's on the agenda for the Helios, just looking over the documentation, I noticed that the decommissioning plan dollars are not, the document is not on the website. There is a reference to a decommissioning plan from earlier this year, but all it shows up is a deed information. I think that after the last meeting, just since we're going into this, there's only one boring that's within the new project limits. The B3, second boring, B4 is just outside the fence line. It'd be nice if we had a letter from WMA Engineering, the geotech engineer, saying that the new project limits, their geotech report is still sufficient. I question whether a new one should be done or any more boring should be done, just to verify. I just throw that out there. The response, the engineer, there's a letter from Ingalls to the supervisor responding to the engineer's comments, number 6 in that response letter. This one is dated September 14th. Sorry, it's a more recent one that was dated November 12th. Number 6, the comment from the engineer is provided a decommissioning plan for the project. However, several items appear to be low, including these items. And the response from Ingalls did not address the comment. It only said we're preparing in accordance to guidelines outlined by NYSERDA. So I don't think that's didn't address the comment, and just want to make sure that we just don't let these things slide. There's obviously do we need to include all the parts that would be part of the decommissioning plan? And as far as screening, the vegetation management, there was a simulation done, and it still shows that some of the internal, they can be seen. The town did not choose this site. The developer chose this site. There is a pipeline that goes down the middle of it. And I think, what does the town code say? The town code says that this has to be screened. So I don't think that allows any wiggle room for view shed leakage, and it needs to be addressed. And they have not done that. So I just want to make sure that we have these things covered to the protection of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Would anyone in this room like to make?
Why did you stop? That's what my week's been like, everyone. I apologize.
No one in this room? Anyone else on Zoom?
Yes, signed up in the chat. Janet, if you would unmute yourself, turn your video on, give us your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Janet Glocker. I live at 791 Rush Henrietta Town Line Road. I'm requesting that you change tonight's agenda and postpone any seeker discussion of Helios. In my mind, there are several possible challenges to continuing the discussion of seeker and Helios. First, the June Planning Board assessment raises several issues with respect to our local solar law. One is unresolved. I believe it's screening. Carl Ost spoke about it a moment ago. And I believe Todd Ewell said very recently that screening is still not compliant with our local solar law. The second challenge to continuing tonight is Kathy Hochul's legislation that was announced on October 19th, 2021. I would like to quote from her website. Governor Kathy Hochul today signed 2 pieces of legislation boosting transparency in state and local government. The first piece of legislation requires documents that are going to be discussed at open meetings to be made available on request or posted on the government's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. The second piece of legislation concerns the MTA, so I won't go into it. The legislation is called Making Documents Available Prior to Open Meetings. It's Senate Law 1150 and Assembly Law 1228. This and I'm continuing to quote from Governor Hochul's website. This legislation makes documents to be discussed at open meetings available to the public at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting. The open meetings law is intended to empower the public through the accessibility of meetings of public bodies. The law requires them to make available to the public relevant documents, such as any proposed rule, regulation, or resolution. However, the current law only requires documents to be made available prior to meetings as determined by the agency or department. This standard has resulted in some government bodies failing to make materials available in advance of meetings, thereby reducing transparency. Today's legislation requires any proposed resolution, law, rule, regulation, policy, or amendment to be made available upon request and to be posted on the body's website at least 24 hours in advance of their discussion at an open meeting, giving the public access to these important documents in advance. Close quote. In closing, I would like to say that Mr. Werner's forefront application process was a masterclass in how to go about Tier 3 solar in our town. Forefront dotted the i's and crossed the t's. Helios should do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Anyone else?
Bill Darren has a question, says, are we doing the budget at 7:15?
We are.
Is there a common period then?
The public will
It's a
be,
public
Public
hearing.
hearing.
Yeah.
Supervisor can, I'm just passing that along. At this point, there's no one else in the chat.
is there anyone else in attendance here who would like to comment? We are almost at 7:15 when we will open the public hearing for the preliminary budget, 2022 budget. You never know if someone's gonna come in a minute late or a minute early. All right. At this point, we'll suspend the existing meeting and we will open the public hearing for the 2022 budget.
Would you like me to read the notice?
Would you read the notice, please?
Hearing on the preliminary budget for the town. Notice is hereby given that the preliminary budget of the town of Rush for the year 2022 has been completed and filed in the office of the Rush Town Clerk, where it will be available for inspection by any interested person during regular office hours beginning on November 29th, 2021. The Rush Town Board will hold a public hearing on December 8th, 2021 at 7:15 PM at the Rush Town Hall, 5977 East Henrietta Road. And at such hearing, any person or against the preliminary budget as compiled. The public may also access a video conference, instruction on accessing it, sorry. The virtual meeting are available at the town website at www.townofrush.com. The preliminary budget includes the following proposed salaries for the elected officials for 2022. Supervisor, 34,232. Town board member, 8,136. Town clerk, 62,741. Town justice, 16,274. Highway superintendent, 85,430.
Thank you. At this point, I'll open the comments to the board. Would anyone like to have at it?
You see anything glaring out on my end, sir?
Pardon me?
I did not see anything glaring out any changes that I saw that was any flags on my end.
We're here to listen to what other people have to say on it. So I'm interested in hearing what the public
Okay,
hearing is.
how about Councilperson Lilliver?
Your public comment.
Mhm.
Councilperson Corbin?
It looks acceptable to me at this point. I will reserve my final judgment based on what I hear from the public.
And my comment will be that we are in compliance with the directives of the OSC, that's the Office of the State Controller. We are dealing with things that have plagued us in the past, and they will not plague us in the future. And you didn't see any changes because we didn't make any profound changes. So I will open it up to the public at the present time. both the public in the room and the public on the Zoom.
Does Mr. Darren want to speak?
He has not written anything in the chat.
Okay.
Anyone in Zoom world wishing to comment, just as in the public comment period during the public hearing, please put your name that you would like to speak and we will call on you. Bill Darren is here. He says hi there. So I guess, Bill, if you would like to speak, you've got 4 comments. I'm guessing you would like to, so unmute yourself, turn your video on, give us your name and address, please.
Hi there, I'm William Darren. I'm the owner of 2097 and 2107 Rushmondon Road in Rush. I thought it might be fun to look at the finances of the town of Rush. The data I'm using is all available online. It comes from the budget reports on the town's website and from the New York State Controller's Office. I spent many hours poring over all this data, trying to make some sense of it. And here's what I see, and here's what I would like our town to do with our money. In the last 7 years, where data is fully available from 2014 to 2020, the town budgets to spend about $2.6 million per year on average. The town actually spends about $2.5 million, which is 5% less on average than what is budgeted. So good news, the town spends less and makes more money every year. Rush government usually spends 5% less than they thought they were going to spend, and they make more dollars than they expect. A standout year was 2019, when about $180,000 in state aid money showed up that the town didn't budget for. Rush is running 5% lower on expenses and 5% over on income, and that means there's money left over every year. What the town does is to take that money out of the savings account and apply it to all our taxes each year, reducing our tax rate by just a little. The amount of give back runs between $120,000 and $160,000 every year. Except this year. This year, the town wants to withdraw the windfall from 2019 and increase the amount that they give taxpayers out of the savings account. Instead of around 150,000 or so, which is the normal high-end use of the overage account, they want to increase it to 323,000, which is over a 20% increase. You might think I'm crazy, but how about we don't give everybody a little teeny tiny tax break? Let's just use the normal 150,000 overage and use the extra money to fix up the town and do some things that are long neglected. Maybe the town could work a deal with the Historical Society and flip the 1911 house, pay for some of the fix up, and then work a deal on getting the place funded and off the town's books as an expense. Make it into a revenue source. I hear the Wi-Fi is bad in the town hall. Maybe spend a little bit more on fixing up the internet access. How about renting the old Big M property and have a farmer's market or a food truck rally or something that cleans up the space and makes the center of town look better? Something for the people. After all, about 100,000 of this extra give back money came from state aid, not from Rush taxpayers directly. I just think that 150 grand could go to do a lot of things, maybe even some big ones to make the town look nicer. And I'll bet you the conservation board, it might have some suggestions. How about going really crazy on the comprehensive plan? It seems there's 78,000 for it allocated now. Why not spend more and make it even better? Work on getting people involved. $8,000 got moved from the central printing and mailing category to the supervisor so he can send out a paper newsletter. Is that really a good use of money? How about hiring a marketing firm to create some great looking promotional material to encourage people in the town to participate? Here's the last time it was done, 1940. Every town meeting, someone stands up and says, don't do anything until the comprehensive plan is done. What a better way to finish that argument than to make an amazing plan that has the support of all the people. I get what the intent of this increase is, to give back out of the savings account. It's to throw a bone to all the poor people who had their taxes go up from the reassessment. Kicking in the extra money is lowering the tax rate per thousand to a lower than it was before the reassessment. The 2022 proposed budget shows a 3.12 per thousand proposed tax rate with a bold highlight on it that says 26.01% decrease. That's wrong. It's incorrect because it doesn't consider that before reassessment, we were on an 86% valuation of assessed property. The effective rate per thousand last year was really lower at 3.70% per 3.70 per thousand instead of 4.22. The proposed 3.12 is only a 12.28% difference. Now here's some interesting stats. There are 1,522 residential properties in the town of Rush, and 1,488 of them had their assessed value go up. That's 96%. The average increase of property value after reassessment for residential property only is $47,000. So a person paying $4.22 per thousand of assessed value, last year's rate on $47,000 is $198. If you lower that rate to 3.12, the same person is going to pay $146. That's a saving of a whopping $51. So maybe it looks great to lower the tax rate per thousand to the lowest it's been in a long time, but the cost is just another race to the bottom of the town of Rush. The bulk of all of our taxes for the county and the school districts. As people age, they get bigger breaks on their school taxes, putting more of a burden on younger people. School taxes run at $20 per thousand and county taxes run around $9 per thousand. Only making the town more valuable do we stand a chance of really making the tax roll go down dramatically. Please, let's get creative and use the money more wisely to do some things to make the town better. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
And my apologies, Bill. I don't know why my mouse keeps hitting the pause button on Zoom, but I will do better. Not even close to the chat. I don't know why. No one else is on chat, Supervisor?
Who else is on chat? No one?
No one else has added their
Okay.
name.
And we'll give another opportunity to people in this room. Yes, ma'am, please identify yourself, your address, and speak your opinion.
Hi, Marianne Rizzo, 25 Stoll Road. I attended the budget workshops, and we all know the tax assessments went up. But I really appreciate you lowering the tax rate to try to bring that to an equalization. I know that you were successful in lowering the tax levy. So I think it's a good thing. I think you did a good job on the budget. I hope you pass it and I hope you get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Anyone on Zoom?
No one on Zoom.
Then I declare the public hearing closed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The clerk will poll the board on passage of the budget.
Need a resolution first?
Yeah, we're gonna do that in new business, I thought.
Well, but the clerk needs to be asked if she's gonna do that.
Resolution is required before I pull the board.
All right, who wants to read the resolution?
So we're not gonna do it at new business like it's scheduled.
Well, the reason I moved it up was because we wanted to make sure that everyone had enough time to make their statements and get any responses. So having that we just held the public hearing and there's no more comments, I think it would be appropriate to pass the resolution for the budget at this point.
Well, we could respond a little bit or discuss maybe what the public comments were. I mean, resident or property owner Darren raised some interesting numbers and facts there along the way, which makes one consider his, thought behind the process. He's got substantial numbers to prove, his point. That anybody wants to discuss that or making a lower amount available, but
Well, I also think Mr. Darren made several good points. But I don't think that we slow down the movement of the budget to being approved because of one person's comments. I can tell you that I certainly would love to hear from Mr. Darren before the budget process starts next year to make sure that we incorporate some of his ideas into the budget to see what kind of reaction they get from the public. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to put in the information that Mr. Darren may not have seen. Our budget we will have an extra $1,300,000 in fund balance with this budget. So I agree that Mr. Darren has a very good point that we should be using money that the town does have, that we've accumulated over the past 10 years to add up to that $1.3 million, and designate a lot of that money for the projects that have been suggested over this past year. We have a property over on East River Road that has buildings that need a lot of renovation. We have, if the 1911 house is to be given to the Historical Society, why are we not designating some of that $1,300,000 into construction budgets in those particular departments? The department that would do the Rush Riverside Refuge would be the Park and Rec. I'm not quite sure where the 1911 house sits, probably under the supervisor's budget. So he did make some good points in designating some of our extra funds. I don't think that he realized just how much in extra funds we. So those are very good points. Is that something that we can approve the budget, but can monies be designated out of the fund balance into, or does that have to be included in the budget where they're designated to?
I will agree with you that Mr. Darren, I will agree with you again that Mr. Darren made some very good points that should be listened to in the development of future budgets. At this point, we want to be very cautious because there's a lot of unknowns out there. There's the unknown of the resurgence of COVID in different forms. We don't know what that's going to do to us in the future. You can speculate, but you can't predict. And we want to make sure that we don't shortchange ourselves in that regard. We also don't want to, the fund balance for library, the fund balance for highway is down very close to where it should or must be, however you look at it. The fund balance for general is
At
large.
60%.
It's large, absolutely. But, you know, one of the things that we're trying to cope with is the fact that whenever there was money, it got dumped into there. So when you take money out of there, you know what you're pulling it out of. And we want to know what we're pulling it out of. For example, the 1911 house had, I think, $19,000 worth of rental income on it over the years that it's been rented. That's rental income, but it's not defined in the way it's been kept. We'll start making sure that if you pull so much money out, it's coming out of X account. So much money out, it's coming out of Y account. That has not been done. That's been part of the problem that we've been faced with in trying to resolve the fund balances and the money. Now this year, for example, we pulled out 275,000 somewhere in that area for the library roof. That came out of the general fund balance. It didn't come out of some property maintenance balance where it should have come out of. It just came out of the general fund balance because we had to get the roof fixed. It had been ignored for 12 years. So we took it out of there, but we want to stop doing that in the future and make sure that when we take money out, we want to make sure that it's not taxpayer money, or we want to make sure that it's not COVID money, we want to make sure we know where it's coming from and we know what the applicable uses are for it.
Okay, I think that was my question. Is that the game plan?
That
you
is the
take-
game plan.
So can we do that outside of the budget? Or does that have to be incorporated into the budget where that money is going to be designated?
It does not have to be incorporated into the budget for where it's
So
designated.
the finance director can, after the budget, we pass this budget, she can go back and start doing new line items for particular uses and take money out of the general fund and put into those line items.
She has already started to do that, not a lot because she's been involved with other things, but she has already started that process. And under my request, that will be a continuing into the new year so that we know exactly what is in what silo and how much we're taking out and take it out of that silo.
And that will all be publicly viewable.
Oh,
So
it should
that-
be, it would be,
okay.
and it should be.
All right, because currently we do not have financials. We don't get monthly financial reports
I know that.
from the finance director as required by law. So having that and being able to look at those in the future as January, when she starts putting new accounts together or new line items together, we'll be able as the public to see that.
That is our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'd like to. I don't know what's going on with my telephone, but my name is Chris Giordano. Can you hear me?
Has been closed. If you have a comment, you can reserve it for the public comment section. I say that with full honesty because we don't intend to do anything with any budget monies, whether they're taxpayer money or relief money. We intend to make sure that every resident has access to that data so they know what we're doing and we're not hiding anything.
I muted him, Supervisor. I apologize. Since the public hearing was closed.
Having no other comments to be made by board members, would the resolution be read, I believe, by Councilperson Wickerham?
I would prefer someone else do it, please.
I'm sorry?
I would prefer someone else do that, please.
Okay. Would someone else like to read the resolution?
I so move to adopt the 2022 preliminary budget as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilman Lane,
Aye.
Councilman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Wilbur,
Aye.
Supervisor Kusey,
Aye. Now, having had at least one person express a desire to speak, and I had to tell him the speak time was over, let's go back to the public comment section and allow people the opportunity to make their statements before we go on to the next item of business. And I'll start again with this room. Would anyone in here like to make a statement? How about on Zoom?
Chris, did you want to make a comment? No one has written in the chat, Supervisor.
Chris Giordano?
he's still muted.
He did not write in the chat. Chris, can you hear us? Oh, he's muted. Asking him to talk to me. What is one of those days? I do not see him anymore. Do you see him, Town Clerk?
Yeah, I just see him in the corner muted.
Oh, there he is.
Lay them down.
All I can do is ask him to unmute. Maybe he no
Can you hear
longer-
me now? I don't know what to do with that. Anyway, I'll make it short. Lehigh Trail, eastward from the post office area, is almost always flooded. You can't walk it. And all it would need would be a little cutout drainage to allow all the rain to drain into the creek. I'm wondering if the town highway, whatever, could look into that. This is a common issue. Thank you.
I will respond to that at the second comment session, if that's acceptable to you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I see a red light. Will do, Bill. No, sir. Everything is good.
All right, then we will move on to close the public hearing. Move on to reports from boards and,
Do we want to do minutes and that kind of stuff?
oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Councilperson Wickerham. We need to do the approval of the minutes from November 10th. Do I have a resolution?
Yep. I so move to approve the town board meeting minutes of November 10th, 2021, as submitted by town clerk Pamela Busey.
I'll
Is there a
second that.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusie,
Aye. And can we have a resolution to approve November 23rd minutes?
I'll move to approve the November 23rd town board meeting minutes as submitted by town clerk Pamela Busey.
I'll second it.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusie,
Aye. And now Deputy Supervisor Corbin will do the approval of budget transfers.
Be it resolved that having audited all the unexpended balance of existing appropriations, I move that transfers number 43 through number 48 in the amount of $41,273.75 be approved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Can we have a discussion before the vote is taken?
This is the time to do it.
Is Finance Director Pereira on?
Yes, I believe I saw her on.
The very first transfer is still kind of confusing, even though she tried to answer the question. The transfer is for $37,640 of miscellaneous revenue, and it's going into law contractual to recognize.
Councilwoman Wickerham left and now she just came back
Okay,
on, so
okay,
make sure I get her on here for you.
okay.
She, I know, has bad internet in a different town. Christine, are you on? Christine, if you could unmute yourself. She is here.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, okay.
My apologies. Sorry about that. My computer froze for a moment. Can you repeat your question? My apologies.
Haven't gotten to the question yet, so I will start again. Budget transfer number 43 for $37,640. I know that I wrote you and asked for an answer and you did respond, but I'd still clarification and for this to be kind of explained to the public. So maybe they'll understand it better than I do. It's coming out of miscellaneous revenue. It's going into law contractual to recognize intervenor funds for the horseshoe solar application phase. And I guess my concern is that we're taking money, taxpayer money, and putting it somewhere to recognize the intervenor funds that we don't have. So the way that you explained it is we're making sure that when we get the bill from the attorney, that there's money in the law contractual, but shouldn't that be in the escrow account for the intervenor funds, or have we not opened that escrow account yet? And until we get the money, I guess my concern is that we're transferring the money well in advance of knowing when we're going to get that reimbursement.
Okay, so there's a few different points to address. First, there wasn't a quote unquote escrow account created for this. Now, this particular transfer number 43 differs from the rest. I mean, we're using the terminology transfer, but this is essentially a budget amendment. So it's increasing estimated revenue and increasing the law contractual appropriation in the same amounts. So it's amending the original budget rather than transferring funds from one to the other. So in terms of the actual expenditures for the intervenor funds, those funds were, I'm sorry, if you look at previous vouchers, they went to law contractual for the intervenor fund. So this is essentially increasing that amount of the appropriations to match that expenditure that was already essentially accrued over time. And in terms of the funds that we're receiving, I already applied for reimbursement. So they said that should take about 5 weeks or so for us to receive it. So within the next few weeks, we should be receiving reimbursement for the intervenor funds. But I don't know if I addressed your question or.
Did address the question, but you raised another one. If
Okay.
This technically is an amendment to the budget. Shouldn't a board resolution be done amending the 2021 budget?
So this is part of amending the budget. Just like when you're doing budget transfers, you're moving funds from one to the other. You're kind of making an amendment, so to speak, but this is just increasing rather than moving funds from one account to another. This is increasing the estimated revenue and the appropriations for the intervenor funds.
For amending the budget's anticipated revenue.
Yes, correct.
So I'm going to ask our town attorney, does it require a resolution to amend the budget?
Well, so the answer is that it requires a resolution, but the resolution really is to make the transfer as is being suggested rather than an amendment of the budget that was adopted.
Okay.
So we're getting to the same point because the
Okay.
board is making a budgetary transfer
Okay.
with respect to certain funds that it is essentially reallocating in anticipation of. in
This is
case-
2021.
Right.
That we expended this.
Right.
So this is
Right.
not the budget we just passed. This
No.
is-
Right.
Oh, I know that.
Right.
I know that. So, I mean, it's the 2021 budget that she said we were amending, and that put up a red flag. So it is not a true amendment to the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
I think.
We're just taking part of that $1.3 million and designating where some of it might go.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank
If I
you.
understand the budget, the finance director's
Okay.
explanation. I
Okay.
think she was referring to the amendment in the sense of just to sort of,
Okay.
not in the legal sense of the word, the actual budget, just to sort of
Okay.
explain.
Okay. Just double checking. Okay.
I do not have any other questions on the transfer supervisor.
Oh, I did. A couple of more. We have a payment to the contractor that did the roof on the 1911 house. I do have a question. The total amount was $19,250. We approved, what did we approve? 18, well, we approved
18,000.
yeah, and we did, but we only approved the roof, the replacement of the roof, the plywood, and the asbestos evaluation. We did not, as part of that resolution, approve costs for siding or costs for the fascia repair. My concern is if those weren't specific in the contract and we're paying that.
I would say, based on my recollection, that those were not specific to the contract,
Right,
but nonetheless,
but that's the contract that we approved was specifically the roof replacement, the plywood costs, should we use it, and the asbestos. So we approved something that was different than.
and we may have not had a full RFP for that job because of the unknowns about the asbestos, because the unknowns about the siding, a little bit of siding that had to be repaired. And do you stop the job and say, we're gonna go approve for 6 weeks? Or do you just say, tell them to go ahead and fix
So
it?
did we have a, what do they call those?
Change order.
Change order for that?
A change order?
Because we did have a change order for the asbestos, but we did not do a change order for the siding and the fascia repair.
Mrs. Hankins, I apologize for having to call on you, but did we see a change order? I don't recall that.
No, this is, they were up there and the materials fell apart. They had to repair that. It's less.
Which is fine, but they
But it-
should have
but what
submitted
it-
a change order.
Could possibly have, it was built into the it was built into the RFP that any of the work, I think, Dan, you could speak to that, that we spoke about the repairs necessary.
It wasn't in the contract,
It was in the.
but it wasn't in the contract. So that's my concern, is that he should have submitted a change order. And he did not.
So can you do that retroactively? There's no choice, once you get up there to put the roof on the dormer. That was the whole, that came up over and over again.
Yep, and if you remember
Councilman
correctly,
Grover,
when we were talking about the contract, I brought up that subject and that the bid was low compared to some of the other work that the other proposals suggested. So that was a concern of mine to begin with, but anyway, so that is my concern, that we did not get a change order on that, which should have happened.
And I agree with that. And John, make it retroactive?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about this,
Yeah,
so.
and we just approved paying it, or we haven't approved paying it
Retroactive to
yet.
what exactly? Town board seeking to approve an expenditure to cover an overage subject to obtaining a change order retroactively?
Well, obviously, even a $500 added expense to do that job completely would have required officially or technically a change order to approve the $500. Because they were up on the roof because of the season, because we just had them go ahead and do the work without the change order being submitted. So I'm saying now, for the record, can we ask them to submit the change order for the cost overrun?
Yes, it's ultimately up to the town board whether it wishes to waive a requirement of the contract, because the change order requirement is to protect the town, not the other way around.
Right.
So if you as a town board believe that this expenditure is appropriate, then you can waive a requirement subject to whatever conditions you want to place on it.
Well, I can assure the town board that there was nothing underhanded about this. This was simply a case of putting together an RFP for a roof that had never been examined by us or anyone else. And we were vulnerable to the changes that we see before us.
Well, I did a little analysis on it, and just for the public's purpose, the roof repair was 12,600. That's what he charged. The asbestos abatement that we added, we had approved for 5,400. His cost was $550. Replacing the plywood at $75 a sheet, that came out to $750. The added expense that Councilman Wickerham has brought up for discussion, replace cedar siding dormer. So that I've seen the cedar siding on the side, $375. Replace fascia, and rehang a gutter, $175. So that is the $550 in addition.
Those are not unreasonable costs. They just
Those are
weren't
reasonable.
applied for before the work was done.
But what I'm saying is that we didn't have a change. It's not a part of the contract. So technically, legally, we should have a change order.
Attorney Mancuso, you had made a comment about, or a statement, the town board could do something with a change order. I'm not sure if you remember what you said a few minutes ago.
Approve the change order.
Way the requirement.
Oh, that was it. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, the board, the contract is drafted to require the contractor to furnish a change order if there's a cost overrun, because obviously the town needs to know how much that amount is, and maybe you don't approve that. You know, that you're holding to the amount that was in the contract.
Or unforeseen conditions.
Right. Which is what this was. So,
It's an
if there was no
unforeseen.
change order, and again, I defer to the town board on this, if you believe the amount is reasonable, then you can't approve payment of that overrun, subject to, receiving a proper change order to memorialize what exactly the cost was and the basis for it. If that's how the board wants to proceed.
I think if it was July 15th, I would say, okay, let's approve a change order. But because of the date and the weather, I never even gave it a thought. That's what the cost came in at, and it wasn't extremely that much more.
Well, a gutter would be very important to have up there. We would not.
No, and
want a
I'm
gutter.
thinking without the cedar on the side, that would just cause another problem. What we're trying to eliminate.
Yes.
And they've already made the inspection.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Councilman Wolliver is educating me, and I don't want to be the only one hearing it. Go right ahead, sir.
The siding had to be replaced because they had to tear it off to put new flashing on, if there was flashing there at all. If there was there, it failed. That was why the roof leaked. And that was part of the problem. I mean, that had to be done.
But that was in the original evaluation.
Mhm.
And it was also in one of the other bid contracts evaluation. So it's not an unforeseen, but it was not addressed in the contract that the town board approved.
Well, the other contract was for 40,000, so
Which
that's
was-
why we didn't approve the other one.
But
Yeah.
there were still added things that needed to be attended to that were not. So I'm just saying, we by law should have had a change order.
And
Do
I
we want to
agree.
do something about that?
So how do we rectify it?
Well, at this
There's
point,
two,
Well-
just pay the bill.
there's two options, I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
We just
Yeah.
passed the cost over.
Since the work's already done, I don't think there's an emergency in terms of trying to protect the building.
Right.
So it's just a payment issue. So I think there's two options. It's either you could approve the expenditure tonight, subject to receiving the change order, and release the funds upon receipt of the change order, or you could have him give you the change order between now and the next board meeting and approve it at the next board. The payment will just be 2 weeks, obviously 2 weeks delayed.
Well, it's part of the abstract right now, so I'm comfortable with approving the payment subject to the change order being turned in within 24 hours. 48 hours.
I
52
am
hours,
comfortable with that.
48.
So we need a resolution to make that happen.
Mhm.
Correct.
And
Well, we have a resolution on the floor now that Councilperson Corbin read with regard to the transfer of the
Transfer
funds. Are there any
funds,
other
that's-
questions?
Not transfer the abstract.
No,
Right,
this was-
no,
this was-
we're
on-
still, we're still on
transfer.
you with the transfer of funds.
still
We've
on the
not even
transfer.
gotten to the abstract
Yeah.
yet. Are we, so
Oh.
we have a motion on the floor for the transfer of funds. We have a second.
Based on Councilperson Wickerham's question.
That would be for
No, it's
the
not,
abstract.
this is
Oh, I
not
thought
the
it was for
abstract.
So
this.
I'm taking the roll for the transfer of funds.
Correct.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Nay.
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusie.
Aye.
Approval of abstract, Councilperson Corbin. Having reviewed all vouchers on abstract 12-1, numbered number 1080 through number 1119, that they be approved for payment in the amount of $65,290.42. I have a second,
I'll second that.
and this is where discussion about that one payment, or is that not allowable?
You can discuss that.
I think we had a discussion.
Well, I know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
does
It was-
that
I
have
was
to be a
premature.
separate
I thought we were already on the abstract.
resolution?
Okay,
And also, a third option, you also indicated that we can make a motion to waive the requirement to have the change order even submitted because the work has been done. And it's just a question of the extra $1,500.
Is that allowable?
$550.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna, yeah, I mean, you could waive the condition of the contract.
Then I'm making a
I
motion.
would,
to
I would
waive-
prefer a paper trail for the records.
Okay,
I would too.
fair enough.
I would too.
So I think if you're approving the abstract, no one needs to add, you need to add just a condition upon.
I
that
will
one.
amend the motion to add that for, of course, I don't know which voucher number that was. Shoot. I know the town
I
clerk
know
yet.
the subject matter, so I
Oh.
can put it in there.
Okay. That payment be made to Todd Frith as in the abstract. Is it contingent on the change order being turned into the town clerk within 48 hours? Or the town supervisor?
I would
Supervisor.
Supervisor.
Yep.
I have the other one.
Okay. All right, so we'll try that again. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilwoman Corbin.
Oh,
Aye.
wait. Couple other things on the abstract, sorry. Did anybody else notice that the electric bills for the 1911 house had doubled for this last month?
It's electric heat.
Yeah, well, so they increased the heat while they were working on the house?
It's been much colder this month than the previous month.
So we're not-
Significantly colder.
So we're not keeping it at the 55 that,
Well,
we
it's going
normally
to
would.
run, if it's 20 degrees out, it's gonna run twice as
Okay.
versus that we're 40 or 50.
okay,
What we
okay,
want to do
understood.
is prevent freeze ups
right,
in whatever water is in the pipes over there now.
okay.
I thought highway drained everything.
Yeah.
The high,
yeah,
well,
Well,
they
but still.
did, but you know, you
There's
can
still
still have.
dampness, mildew, yeah.
Okay. The other concern that I had with and not so much the abstract, but the finances itself, is that we are over budget in several of the accounts. I'm seeing at least 6 accounts
Is
that are over budgeted.
is this part of the approval of the abstract?
No,
Okay, so can we at least get that done?
sure, okay, on the next one, it just was.
No,
part
I
of-
just, otherwise we'll
Okay.
get off and we won't remember where we're at.
Okay, all right, no, go ahead.
Councilperson Corbin,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Councilman Wickerham,
Nay.
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusie.
Aye. All right. Councilperson Wickerham, did you want to make your comments at any special time?
Well, that's entirely up to you.
Well, I'm giving you the opportunity.
Okay.
You could say now or at the public comment period or whenever.
No, I'll do it. I mean, the public comment is for people outside the board. Okay. Let's bring up that topic. You want me to give my board member report and include it in there, or,
Very cool.
okay, so,
We can move on to reports from board members and departments, and we'll start with Councilperson Corbin.
all right. I attended the Conservation Board meeting last week and ran their technology Zoom shared docs with guests in person and at home. I attended the tree lighting ceremony. It was a wonderful evening, very cold, but a wonderful evening, seeing so many come out to share that event. Thank you to Sumi, the Rush Historical Society, and the RH Singers, and everyone that attended. I attended the Horseshoe Solar Virtual Forum on their transition from New York State Article 10 to 94C. And today I attended my first New York State Farmland Protection Work Group this afternoon via Zoom. And given it ended at 5:45, I will report on it at next board meeting. And that is all.
Thank you.
How long did it
about-
go? 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
How about Councilperson Lang?
I had a quiet 2 weeks since our last town board meeting. However, coming up tomorrow, I will be attending the zoning board of appeals. On Monday, we have our December comprehensive plan meeting on December 13th. And I will be attending the planning board meeting on December 21st. That's it.
Councilman Lang, can I just ask, I know that when I attended the last zoning, or I watched, and I heard Attorney Mancuso say he was gonna do a training. Is that tomorrow night?
Correct.
Yes.
Tomorrow night at the
Yes.
zoning board?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so anyone can zoom in and watch that, is that correct?
Well.
Because I haven't seen an agenda
Yes,
online and
it
how to
was-
get
it
on.
was Designated attorney-client privilege, so it was just for the board.
Right.
It wasn't a public.
Oh. Had invited the plan.
Right,
board.
members of the town that are within the town of Rush can attend.
So the town board could.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
public
so
attend if
how
you
would
wish
we
to.
get that information?
The materials? Or
Well, the Zoom.
Oh,
the
I was
Zoom.
coming in person to do it.
What's
I
that?
was coming in person. 'cause
Oh,
it's
you're
after the
coming in
meeting.
person.
We're-
Right.
We have one, believe we have one matter on the agenda and that's it. So since it was a short night, we were gonna finish
Right.
town business and I was already here, so
Okay.
I would do that post week.
All right, because the agenda, when I looked at 2 days ago, there wasn't anything there, so I thought maybe there
Right.
wasn't, but, so there is an actual application?
People want to zoom in.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not opposed to circulating a link if people do want to zoom in, easy enough for me.
That
to
would be great.
Stand up there and have the owl broadcast.
That would be
it, that's fine.
wonderful.
I was wondering, how would the rest of the board?
We'd be in attendance. If
Either-
you wanted
Either
to.
in person or virtual is fine if someone was.
It's attorney-client. so
It's
not a
attorney client,
problem.
so it would just be disseminated to those board members that wish to participate.
I can set that up.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilperson Wickerham.
Okay, I did attend as well the Horseshoe Solar virtual, well, call-in last night, and it was very informative. I think it was relatively well attended. I think they said 7 concerned citizens called in, and the Invenergy did give pretty detailed information. I know that she's going to make the PowerPoint available on their website if anybody is interested. Like I said earlier, I'm concerned that we have accounts in our budget, well, in our finance department that are over budget and continue to be. It's another one of those making sure that allotments are appropriate on prior expenses. I know that we've been doing a lot of transfers out of other accounts, which it looks like we're over budget in those accounts now, in to pay for the New York State retirement fees and insurance fees. That's a concern of mine. I did notice that Building Inspector Limbeck had asked us to talk about the 2022 fee proposals so that it was enacted by the first of the year, but it's not on the budget or on the agenda, but then I see that there's a resolution for it, so I'm a little confused there. The other thing that I'm kind of concerned about is that the original agenda that came out on Friday included the starting of the discussion on the Moore project. When I got the amended budget the other day, it was off. So I guess I'm interested in knowing whether you've had conversations with Mr. Moore and Mr. Sharaba in the past 2 weeks about what's expected. You promised not only on the 27th of October, but then again in November twice, that you would get a letter out to them, and it still has not been sent as far as your and my conversation today. My concern is that we are out of compliance with the state regulations, and there are timeframes associated with a review of an application request. We've already established agency. We have 30 days. We had 30 days to establish that lead agency from the time of submittal. We did not do that. 20 days we're supposed to have filed or at least made a determination of significance. That has not been done. I guess my other concern is that because we have not had communication with or communicated with the applicant, timeframes can only be extended by mutual consent. We have not done that. So I am very concerned that we are in jeopardy of being liable for an Article 78 action. And how are we gonna start complying with the laws and the regulations?
Attorney Mancuso, you've been part of those conversations. Would you like to address?
I would prefer to do that in an attorney-client privileged session, since this is probably going to be direct legal advice to the board.
Okay,
If that would be my recommendation, and since we are.
Accepted.
okay, then we can do that. That'll be my. Perfect, thank you.
Okay. How about Councilperson Louisville?
I attended the Christmas tree lighting ceremony. That was very nice. I toured the Rotary Sunshine Campus Light Show. That's very nice. I recommend everyone go to that. I attended the Conservation Board meeting. They issued a statement about the Moore project. And the Conservation Board would like to have, and they've been talking about electronic copies of everything. They'd like to have one hard copy of all the plans they're reviewing.
Each or for the whole board?
One for the whole.
They do.
But we didn't have one for anything they reviewed at the last meeting.
There was no.
There were no hard copies of anything. They'd like to have one here.
Did we have any because they're from previous?
Yeah, there were two.
One was the
zoning,
cell tower.
The cell tower.
If you can meet with me on separate, we can discuss what they did or didn't have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Joy.
All right, we can move on to Town Clerk Busey.
I attended a refresher webinar on the New York State local retirement reporting of elected and appointed officials. I will be attending the Monroe County Town Clerk, Tax Receiver, and Collector meeting tomorrow. And I have sent a packet to the newly elected officials for a virtual training that will be on January 6th and 7th, as well as the Association of Towns in-person training in New York City that is scheduled February 20th through the 23rd. And I've heard back and have scheduled one official this far. I also would like to comment, and if Attorney Mancuso would like to comment on the requirement of the Governor Hochul's law that we have followed and are following. And I do not believe there is anything that is not available to the public already on the website. It is what is ever practicable within the time frame. There is one item tonight that I know that was not available to the public, but was available via Zoom tonight because it was not received until after hours. That was not on. And if there are any residents that would like information that is not on the website and cannot find it, I have received calls and I have walked them through it. But if they would like to call me, I'd be more than happy to help them find it. And if not on there, I can put it on. And I also believe that Mr. Limbeck, Building Inspector Limbeck, can speak to the resolution that I did provide the town board. He did ask me to create the resolution per Supervisor QC's direction.
Fee
And
changes.
that is why it is on and not on the agenda this evening.
And after that, Mr. Mancuso and I talked, and that's why it came off, and Mr. Mancuso will address that when his time comes up. How about Attorney Mancuso?
I guess I'll ask the question, what came off because of, maybe we're not on the same page.
The fee schedule
Oh.
proposal of.
Nope. I did not discuss the fee schedule proposal.
Oh, you didn't.
Nope.
I'm not calling on you to respond to that. I'm asking you if you've got any updates.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I do not have any updates. I will say that the town clerk's report was accurate in the sense of the open meetings law. To my understanding, there has been no issue of compliance with that. But obviously the law has changed, and changing it to a time certain of 24 hours before the meeting rather than prior to the meeting, which was the old law. It still has the practicable standard within it. So there still is discretion on the part of the town to determine what is and is not practicable. And my understanding from at least the perspective of the Helios project is that a substantial portion of those documents, I believe, are on the E-code 360 component of the town website. If you will.
I will comment on that just because of knowing all those documents is we can do better in somehow, I don't know how E-code, the town clerk and I have talked about other items on that, to flag and say, these are what would be on this meeting versus looking at 50 documents and saying, which one are they going to talk about under that resolution? That's what we can work on in the future.
I don't disagree, and my recommendation would be to discuss a protocol, a process by which certain documents are or are not posted to the website 24 hours before the meeting. I've spoken to many town attorneys, other town officials in other towns to see, what the landscape is for other municipalities. And so I'm happy to have those discussions behind the scenes to discuss what is appropriate for the town of Rush, because I don't think it's a one size fits all implementation.
Is Augie with us?
He is not.
I didn't think so. Thank you, John.
Yep.
I don't believe that Assessor Minio is with us, so we can jump right into a presentation by John Limbeck.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I did attach the building permit spreadsheet for your review and use. Since the last town board meeting, I've only issued 2 building permits, and this is the fewest number in a 2-week period for the entire year. Many of the projects are finishing up and my associated inspections are occurring. I've got a pretty steady pace right now, getting things inspected and closed. I'm also working to close the remaining permits from 2020. Most of the delays for those are in finishing. They can mostly be attributed to unavailable materials or contractor scheduling issues. Right now, contractors are getting anywhere from 3 to 5 week delivery issues with concrete. And a lot of that can be attributed to what's going on at the Amazon facility over in Gates. But it's not unusual to get a 3-week delay in getting concrete delivered. The violations at the West Henrietta Road property are being addressed and should be completed by the 12/31/21 deadline that was imposed by the town court. A public hearing for the accessory uses and structures in residential zoning districts and the landscape malls still needs to be scheduled so we can get those passed and into the books. And the proposed fee schedule for 2022 is going to be an item on the 2021, not 18 town board agenda. Excuse the typo, please. Please review that schedule that I provided and get back to me with any questions or comments. Are there any comments or questions on my report before I get into Rick Tracy's?
John, are you going to bring the public up to date on the number of dwelling that have been issued in the last 5 years? I thought that was impressive.
Oh, I didn't have that total number, Jerry. I didn't plan on sharing that tonight. I can do that at the next meeting if you'd like.
That would be pretty interesting for people.
Okay, all right, I'll include that in 2 weeks. From the Fire Marshal, Code Enforcement and Emergency Preparedness Office, there are 2 potential drainage situations on Pinnacle Road that are being addressed. We'll have some more information on those as we get information from the residents themselves. At our last meeting, I talked about some of the cattail cutting around Schofield Creek. I did, after calling Albany, get the DEC to look into this. They went over and visited the site, and subsequent to their investigation, a violation has been issued to the individual for not only cutting the cattails, but there was some clear cutting of trees in the same area. I asked the DEC if the town needed to do anything, and he said no. They will issue this violation notice. The individual has 3 options. He can pay the fine that DEC suggests, or he can take it to town court or to county court to have that addressed. So that's all settled, and I let the residents that reported it know. Rick's working with the County of Monroe to obtain and pick up the at-home COVID test kits that Supervisor QC read during the announcements. Rick was told they're scheduled to receive 857 boxes, which 2 in a box gives us 1,714 test kits. And again, scheduled to receive them tomorrow. And it's up to each municipality to determine the distribution procedures. And as the supervisor mentioned, a drive-through type distribution with the requirement that a government ID or utility bill be required to prove residency. I guess there's a real concern that people will travel from town to town and try to hoard kits. So I think all the municipalities are trying to make sure that they have a fair and equitable distribution. Rick's continuing to encourage everyone to practice all the precautions that we have stressed since the beginning of the pandemic, including but not limited to frequent hand washing and sanitizing, social distancing, mask usage, and staying at home when sick. On Tuesday, 12/7/21, Rick received a new property maintenance concern for an address on Rush Scottsville Road, which is in the early stages of investigation. So if there's any questions or comments for that, I'd be glad to take those as well.
I just wanted to add, based on the comment about the controlled distribution of test devices, when we were distributing masks in a similar fashion, we found out that people were coming from other towns to get masks, boxes of masks. And we don't want that happening with the test devices. No
Correct.
town, everyone experienced that.
Okay, and that's all I have for the board this evening. Thank you.
We can now move on to our Director of Finance, Christine. If you have a report, Christine.
Hi, Supervisor. I guess my only report would be to let the department heads know that I set the health benefit guide over. So I'll be sending some forms and memos over shortly. And that'll include some additional information like FSA and Flex. And also a reminder to the board, if they haven't already, to discuss escrow funds. We mentioned it briefly the last board meeting, but the board needs to come to a decision on how they want to handle that. And that's pretty much it.
For everybody's information, the due date for the healthcare elections,
Oh, okay, yes, the open enrollment period ends Monday, December 20th. So that's actually listed on the employee guide that went out, but I'll also be sending some memos as well with some additional information. But yes, December 20th is the end of the open enrollment period.
thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Highway Superintendent Mark David, I don't think he's with us.
I did not see him on.
And historian Sue Me.
Let me see if she is on or not.
I am.
Yes.
All right, you have the floor.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate a little bit of what has already been said and thank all who attended and supported our annual tree lighting this past Saturday evening. As in past years, the RH singers led us in song, and they did a most amazing job. I'd like to thank Supervisor Kusi for providing the opening and closing remarks, and to our highway department for trimming the tree for us. It's grown significantly since 2017 when it was planted, and had to actually buy different lights this year in order to reach from top to bottom. So that's good. It seems to be thriving in its location. I appreciate our community for turning out on such a cold and windy night to help launch the holiday season in Rush. And also I'd like to thank the volunteers who did all the cookie baking and helped serve the hot chocolate. So it was a good evening, good turnout. And just a reminder that our first, hopefully annual, Rush Quilt Show will take place January 29th and 30th in the Judicious Pavilion. We're hoping that many of our talented Rush quilters will submit their work for others to see and to appreciate. Information about the show, including quilt entry forms, will soon be available online at both the library and the Rush Historical Society websites. Proceeds of the show will benefit both the Friends of the Library and the Rush Historical Society. And lastly, I would just like to acknowledge and thank our town board for approving the installation of the new roof on the 1911 corner house. I think it looks great. I'm happy to know the new roof will help preserve the structure of the house. And I appreciate that this step will help us from losing another older property within the hamlet of Rush, and one that is so centrally located at the gateway intersection to our hamlet. I anticipate that our Rush residents will benefit from the use of additional community space. So thank you.
Thank you. How about the library?
No report.
No report. Then I'll pass on the report from our recreation supervisor, Pat Stevens, who stated that November was a very busy month. They are getting together with Lifespan because they've had great success in the past. They're going to offer a program in the first part of next year, 2022. She also mentioned that she's putting together a plan for proposed uses of the Rush Riverside Refuge property for the LWRP grant between the town of Rush and Henrietta. Other than that, she said everything's going good. She's happy, so we're happy. With that, we can.
Supervisor Kusi?
Yes.
Christine brought up a topic that she was hoping we would address about the escrow accounts. Is that something that we want to talk about tonight?
I don't think that's a tonight subject matter, but Christine, I'll leave that up to you.
So my question is, if we don't speak on it tonight, then when would we speak about it? Because essentially myself and the town clerk kind of need a decision so that we can kind of move forward in what we need to do in regards to how those funds are being handled.
Can we put it on for next?
Can we, Christine, can we put that on for the next meeting?
Sure, but I do suggest that it definitely be on the next meeting so we can kind of come to a decision and make the necessary changes before end of year.
The reason I suggest that is I suspect there's going to be some conversation about that,
Sure.
which should be heard.
Can I
I think
ask, Dean, would it be possible for you to put a paper together with your suggestions about how this should be done? I've received something from the town clerk suggesting that escrow accounts should be handled by the finance director, which I would wholeheartedly agree. I tried to do a little bit of research on the law 100-25, and it said it was amended back in August 28th of 2019, but I could not find any documentation in board minutes or anywhere that amended this law. So what I was looking for is what was the original law that was amended on that date, but I couldn't find anything.
I believe the original law is the version on E-code 360. I don't think, there are several amendments that I don't believe have been incorporated and updated into the main text. I think the local law itself,
It's on E-code.
it's on E-code, and I think it's probably under legislation.
Okay.
And so if you click the legislation tab to the left-hand column, you can scroll back down. I think as early, it says here is 2014. I think
Okay.
there's a whole
Okay.
grouping of local laws that have not made its way into the.
Okay, so you think that the original law whenever it was done, said that the town clerk would be the one that would open the account? I guess that.
Can I just, only because you're talking about something that I'm not prepared to even understand. So I like the idea of the finance director putting something together, maybe with the town clerk, disseminating that to the board so we can be better prepared to have that discussion.
And those are the questions that I would want her to be able to answer is,
That's
it
fair.
makes sense, but I need to know the history.
Did you hear that, Christine?
Yes, I did. So I can most certainly put something together. I have put some notes, but I'll expand on it, and then I'll connect with Pam too. I know she put in on that chain some of her thoughts on it, but maybe she might want to add some additional thoughts or suggestions. But yeah, that's something I can most certainly do.
Good, thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
You're welcome.
We can, to the old business.
Supervisor Pat Stevens is on,
Oh,
Recreation Director.
well, Pat, I just gave you a report.
Pat, you're muted.
Sorry, I just wanted to know if anyone had any questions related to Nathan's Gaga court process on how he's doing with that. Jerry wanted me to put it out to you to find out if you had any questions that I could send back to him. I certainly don't have any questions, but he's going at a pace that I think that he can handle at this point. So I have no concerns.
I did not mention the Gaga ball court, Pat, because of the season. If he takes 3-4 months to get it done, that's fine.
Yeah, definitely.
His plan to put it in during the winter months, doesn't he have to dig like what happens when the ground freezes?
They anchor it, but they don't dig.
Yeah,
So they're
and they don't dig, but it's not meant to be really banged around. It's supposed to be played around inside of it. So it's really not going to be moving around that much.
My initial impression was that they were going to dig a hole for it.
No.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions about Nathan or?
No.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay. Everyone have a good evening.
Appreciate it. You have a great evening. Can I move on to old business now? All right. We need to pass, or we'd like to pass the Community Choice Aggregation Program. We can open up the discussion with the board. And then Dan, will you read the resolution?
We already had the rest of the discussion. There is one thing after we adopt this, we need to appoint an administrator. Town of Henrietta just picked Jewel to administer their program. I've asked Sue Hugh Smith from Rocktricity to give me a list of people who do that kind of thing. So I'll get it listed together and see what I can find out about administrator.
Do we know what the time involvement is?
Do we know what it costs to being the administrator is?
There is none because they charge to the electric.
Yeah, they take it out of our savings. So it's.
Okay.
That sounds loose.
And
We still get a savings of 7 to 9%.
we'd get a contract with that
Yes,
administrator.
correct.
Maybe we should look for more loose things. All right. Any other discussion?
Supervisor, just so you know, I do have the proposed law shared on for those at home as well as those of you here.
I have one comment.
If someone reads it, I will move through it.
I just have one comment, and that fact that we're looking to pass a CCA program, which ultimately involves leasing, buying, getting energy through probably solar or wind from other towns that have these projects. And we're so oftentimes opposed to solar in our very own town. It seems kind of contradictory. Our own town here where we can generate solar farms and energy, and we're now going into a place where other towns are gonna be making the funding and monies coming into their tax base because of what they're selling to us. But just a comment and observation from all the townspeople that are always so opposed to their comments on the community solar projects that go on. So
This is not to correct you, it's just to let the citizens know that I think most people in Rush are for solar. The protests we've seen have been about the placement of solar.
It's still ironic.
Your opinion?
Not a bad word.
Exactly.
All right. Do we have a resolution to be read for?
Do we have to read the local law into?
Oh, come on, of course he does.
no, just
Just a resolution.
Just the resolution, okay.
I propose a resolution to adopt a local law to amend the community code, to amend the town code for community choice aggregated program. That'd be local law number 6.
Right.
5. Do I have a second?
I'll
There
second
was
it.
a res, there was
Oh,
a
no,
res,
there's a whole
there's a whole
resolution.
There's a whole
Yeah, I thought there
resolution.
was.
I don't.
See, I just had the local law. I didn't
That's
find
all
I didn't find the resolution.
So,
I believe we have a copy that was in your green folder.
no, it
No?
wasn't, no, it wasn't in there.
I thought it was.
Helio's proposed resolution. There it is. Okay. Did it have any changes from when Pam? Okay, I've got it up right here. So do you want me to read it?
What, show us where you have it.
On my
Oh,
email?
I thought it's, so
On
it's
my
not in our
email.
green folder.
No, it's on my email. Okay,
All right.
okay. All right, that's coming off because I can't talk and breathe at the same time. Okay, resolution of the town board of the town of Rush regarding local law number 5 of 2021 to amend the code of the town of Rush by adding chapter 46 regarding the community choice aggregation program. Whereas the town board of the town of Rush, the town board, has determined that it is in the interests of the town of Rush to amend the code of the town of Rush, the town code, by adding chapter 46 regarding the community choice aggregation program, and whereas a public hearing on local law number 5 of 2021 was held on November 23rd, 2021, in accordance with the requirements of the New York State Municipal Home Rule Law, and notice was posted as required by law. And whereas all persons at the hearing desiring to speak on the matter were heard, all correspondence on the matter was read, and these statements were considered by the town board. Now therefore be it resolved that the adoption of local law number 5 of 2021 is not an action as defined under the New York State Environmental Quality Review, period, didn't say, oh, Act, sorry. Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law and 6 NYCRR Part 617, collectively referred to as SECRA, and thus it is not subject to review under SECRA, and be it further resolved upon the due consideration of the town board, local law number 5 of 2021, a copy of which is attached and incorporated hereto, is hereby adopted, and that chapter 46 shall be added to the town code as reflected in the local law number 5 of 2021. How many times do we say that? And be it further resolved that notice of the resolution shall be filed and circulated to the extent required by any applicable provision of the town code and or any relevant statute or regulation. And be it further resolved that said resolution and local law shall take effect immediately upon its filing in the office of the Secretary of State in accordance, excuse me, with section 27 of the New York State Municipal Home Rule Law. The adoption of the foregoing resolution was moved by Phyllis Wickerham and seconded by
I'll second it.
Dan Woliver, and duly put to a vote.
Councilwoman Corbett,
Aye.
Councilman Lane,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Williver,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusie.
Aye.
The resolution was thereupon duly adopted. Yay.
Okay. Thank you all. Want to take a drink of water?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Next, we can move on to the resolution to release the RFPs for the new finance software, pending approval by the town attorney. Everybody, I think, got a RFP.
Yeah, we got it 2 weeks ago, I think.
Any discussion?
Have one question. I know that the current finance program is Christina. Okay. The current finance program is also used by the town clerk. And I just want to make sure that all of the specifications in this request take into account that the town clerk needs to be able to use it with the systems that she uses. So I just want to make sure that that is a high priority when finding a new program.
The finance director is on Zoom if you would like her to unmute herself.
Hi there. Yes, I can respond to that. So this RFP is something that was essentially worked on with Pam received a copy, so she had ability to make any suggestions, add anything she wanted to. But at the end of the day, during the whole process, as you know, we're receiving back information from other companies and, eventually doing demos. The clerks will be part of that process because they will be using the same software. So, the input's going to come from myself and also from Pam to make sure everybody's comfortable with the new software.
So that you're going to make sure that things are compatible with the systems that she's required to use by the state as well.
Correct.
It's my understanding that the clerk will be part of the overall review and ensure for herself that the new proposed software, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I would speak, I think this is just a very broad RFP because some of the information in there, we want to get as much information, we can chop it down if we don't need one or the other, or the cost is too high, especially for like, if there are 6 licensing people. Right now, we have 3. Do we need 5 or 6? It depends on what kind of system it is and how expensive it's gonna be.
Okay.
And you will play a role in that selection.
I hope so.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
No, I think it's always good to be looking at new products. What is currently out there? Is it compatible with the people that need to use it? And so it's a win-win to see what could potentially be provided. If it's something that they don't get back that they like, then they can make that decision as well.
Absolutely.
What's the new budget for this?
20,000.
Now, the other question that I just wanted to ask is if the other towns that do use it, if they have talked to any other towns, because there's 4 other towns in the county that do use our current system, how it would apply and transfer over if they've looked at other systems as well.
I think that's a good question for the vendor when you get around to that point.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that Christine has talked to the other towns that already have it, if it is somewhat compatible.
I can't speak for Christine, but I can say that based on what she's been trying to accomplish with this, I think 18-year-old software, she's going to be very scrutinizing when it comes to making sure that it fits her needs and other needs. And
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry, if I can interject. I do have a document that has some notations on a few of the towns and what they were currently using and what their thoughts were. But I essentially need to update said document and reach out to towns and get compile some more information because that will be helpful. But I think at the end of the day, what will also be helpful is having live demos and with these vendors, and that way we can actually see the software in real time, and then able to ask questions and just kind of having that visual aspect in terms of how it'll work for us specifically. But it's always definitely helpful to know what other towns, especially towns in New York State, are using and what their thoughts are.
Okay. The one thing on this proposal, though, the dates are off because we're already into December. So we're not even issuing it until December of 2021. How long are you giving vendors to submit? Are we talking January 2021 now? And then not getting an approval till February or March, depending on. Because if we're going to put this out there, we ought to have the correct dates if we're going to do a resolution on a document. Right now, this document is incorrect.
So just, go ahead, Christine.
So when this document initially went out, it was November. But at this point, we can most certainly update the document and, to change the dates and update that. And so I'm guessing, any resolution that happens can, take place with the notation that the issue and due date would change accordingly to when the document is sent out.
So, and currently the resolution reads that subject to the review and approval of the town attorney. So I'm assuming you have not seen this yet.
I have not reviewed it. I can make these modifications under that framework. So as
Oh,
long as it's
okay.
subject to review by the town attorney, I can make sure the dates
Okay.
match up and
Okay.
anything else needs to be changed.
Okay. And I'm just going to make one comment, seeing that this is probably not going to be coming back in until after my tenure here is finished. I would just like to ask that Christine, once you do get the proposals in, that you do talk to the other towns about what they use, and if any of those contracts, what they use, which one, what they feel before the town makes any decision on them, so that you have input from people who've actually used it, not just so much the demonstrations, but also talking to people who use these programs on a daily basis to see what the pros and cons are before any decisions are made. And that is coming from me as a board member tonight, but as a concerned citizen that you're going to be spending upwards of $20,000 of my tax money.
Fair.
Oh, what was that sound?
That was on your-
Is that on my computer? My apologies. Sorry about that. So yes, I agree. And that's something that definitely can be done. And I can look for the notes I have from regarding the towns that we do have notations for. So if you guys are interested, I can send that out to you as well. But it would definitely serve us well to update that document.
Any other discussion? Clerk poll the board.
We haven't done the resolution yet. Would you like us to read the resolution?
Oh, was that thing I know what that was, Phyllis.
All right.
Any volunteer?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move to authorize the issuance of request for proposal for the purchase of new finance software, subject to the review and approval of the town attorney.
Do we need to put a dollar figure in here? Or is that for the contract only?
That's just the,
Yeah, we
this
don't know
is
how
just
much
the
it-
RFP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Councilwoman Corbett,
Aye.
Councilman Lane,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham.
Aye.
Councilman Holver,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusey.
Aye. Now, we can move on to new business number 2, the Helio start of seeker process. But I don't think that's cast in concrete. And John, do you want to comment on that? Would you like me to comment on it?
If you make supervisor comment first, I'm happy to jump in and supplement as needed.
All right, and do you have any comment? I know you had a updated.
I had redone the, what's it, TSES2. There was one in February. I went back and found the application had been revised, updated since. So I redid it. That was sent out to I believe it was sent to the board. It was sometime today, it was afternoon time frame. I also went through Councilwoman Corbin's request, looked at the part 1 of the EAF, and there were some discrepancies in there. Nothing that I believe the attorney can speak to this too, that would uphold it. You probably need to be corrected. But there were things like it said, Rush Farm 2 versus the plans of, Rush 1. There were some sections on the disturbance in the table that weren't filled in, but there were reasons why. I went through that with Councilwoman Corbin. And there was a question on also, if you want to go through your list, or- she had about 6. There was one on the wetlands, which are there and they're not being affected besides the fact that runoff will naturally go towards them because we're proposing a project up on the hill. But the SWIP was checked out. I had comment on the SWIP in my previous letter. And I acknowledge the gentleman's comments on the borings because I agree with him. The borings currently
Are
are
you
not,
talking about Carl?
Carl, located within the footprint, only I think one. So that could be either, like he said, optional. Either we request that, these are all technical issues that if the board decides to move forward, would be vetted. You know, we can talk to the applicant tonight about them, just so they're aware, or maybe that's premature. So I'll leave it to the board, and to the attorney to decide how you want to proceed.
I think the only other global comment I saw was the date of the mapper that was attached to the part one. I went back and checked it. Currently, as of today, the information is the same, so there was no change in the databases maintained between 18 and 21 with respect to those those categories that were auto-populated, so the information is still accurate. And as to the town engineer comments, is correct in terms of what, the board does have options in terms of how it wishes to proceed. Whether there are things that need to be corrected in advance of beginning of part two analysis, whether these are issues that pertain to certain categories of things that need to be addressed, and the board wishes to proceed with some of the part two, because this is going to take more than one night, certainly. So I do recall with the forefront project, I believe there were certain categories that the board intentionally tabled to later meetings because there was some information still outstanding. I think agriculture might have been one of them, if memory serves me correctly. So really, it's up to the town board. Do you wish, is there anything by way of substance that you wish to talk to the applicant about, either if they are on tonight, I'm not sure, or by way of written correspondence? And does the board want to proceed tonight to begin its part two analysis if it feels it has sufficient information to do so?
Well, my response became very halfway immersed recently because of comments that I heard from people on Woodruff Road, and because of the comments I read from the planning board, I believe it was. And John, I talked with you about this a couple of times and asked if it was appropriate to go forth with those conditions as documented by Helios and by the Conservation Board.
Yeah, so focusing on seeker, so I'll start with the seeker process. The project as proposed, obviously.
Well, can I ask why we're even going there yet?
I was just trying to answer.
Oh, okay.
Just setting it up.
Not a problem.
The process is that, so we're the lead agency under seeker. So as the lead agency, the first step, which is a series of steps, but the first broad step, if you will, is making a determination of significance. So either there are one or more potentially significant adverse impacts, which is a positive declaration, which means that the seeker process continues through environmental impact statement preparation and findings, or it's a negative declaration. That was what the forefront project resulted in, which is there are no potentially significant adverse impacts. Now, in order to make the determination of significance, you are evaluating all of this information, including but not limited to things like the visual assessment. You know, is it screened in accordance with the town solar law? If the answer is yes or no, or there's degrees of screening, that's something this board needs to evaluate. The weight that you afford that screening or lack thereof is something you can consider as the lead agency. Is it, is it an impact on community character? What is the substantiality of that impact? Do you believe that to be significant enough to be, a significant, potentially significant adverse impact, or do you not? Because projects can have impacts. It's really a function of this board's evaluation of those impacts and whether you want to proceed with the project to approve it in that form, or it ends up being revised, or there's other things that need to be done in order to address the impact. Because, for example, if you went to put a Walmart somewhere, a lead agency could find there's a substantial adverse impact on traffic. They may still decide to approve it because on balance, they find that the benefits to the community outweigh the traffic significance. So, it's up to this board. Do you have enough information to evaluate the impact? If the answer is yes, you can proceed in evaluating it at your discretion. If the answer is no, you don't think you have enough information, then we need to ask the applicant for something else. If it's further study, further visualizations, or there's some other impact that has not been provided to this board by way of a study. Does that answer your question, hopefully?
It does. So the expectation of Helios is to provide an updated application?
That's a question for the board. If you feel like, again, if there's something that is missing, something that needs to be updated, we should advise them accordingly to provide that to the town board. My question is, what does the town board wish to do with some of the questions that have been posed in terms of the part one? Something like correcting the first page in terms of the title of the project, I think it's easily rectifiable.
Well, again, I will beg to differ that wasn't your job to update the EAF mapper, that should have been requested based on our town engineer of asking the applicant, because and even if it hasn't changed, those are the type of things that we should be asking them as would be asking any applicant to do. I'm not saying that it wasn't right or wrong, but as far as the document that I have from our town engineer says applicants should provide an updated, EAF mapper for part one. Not the town engineer or not the town attorney. So I'm concerned that our process and procedure that we have set up here is that we are following it. So we are following all the check boxes and things like that. So that was one of my points that I taught. My other concern is that having gone through Forefront, with Councilman Williver and Supervisor QC, we had all this stuff put together by you for our review. And we didn't get this until yesterday afternoon. And I literally spent hours and hours of my time last night just being able to try to do one of those questions. I know Councilwoman Wickerham and Councilman Lang, it is a daunting process to go through and have that right documentation. So, but the overarching concern I have, and I have from the beginning of this, is that we have a local solar law. I don't think this town board has any right to overrule a local law that a previous town board in 2019 passed, which says a landscape buffer shall be provided around the Tier 3 energy system to provide screening from adjacent properties. The Tier 3 solar energy system shall be completely screened from any adjacent properties. The planning board report said on page 1, resolved that the planning board recommends to the town board that this application should be recommended for the creation of a solar energy system overlay district only after substantial study and verification of the May 28th design features, including screening. So it was a concern of theirs, how I read it. It is in our local law, and I feel that the visuals that Helios provided to us just don't give us an adequate answer. We've got an old picture and a new picture from the old one versus the new one, and I still can't make out where the panels are. How is the public supposed to know which are panels, which are not panels? So I'm not trying to cause any dissension or anything like that. I'm just trying to say, I still think that there is work we have to do to make sure that the residents have as much information to be able to comment on, and that we moving into the part 2 of the seeker, when me going through that part 1 for 3 hours last night, these different things jumped out at me. I don't know how many of the rest of you went through the part 1, but there were definitely some things, but it all comes down to that screening, and it is a local law, so.
And I'll just to comment on the 100% screening, which was passed prior to me sitting on this board and drafted by others before me. However,
And me.
when it comes down to it, I mean, you have to look at the practicality of the law and 100% screening. And at one point, do you invite litigation from a developer saying that your law is unreasonable? And eventually, it's going to get challenged. And, if anybody wants to comment.
John's point, what he was trying to explain in the secret process is, as you know, Amber, and I agree, some of the stuff has been difficult to understand in the documents. You can see all these, I was trying to put these all together.
This is just one
And
of how
everything
many
isn't
we have,
always
right?
the same, and I had, whatever. So I go through it all as I get it, I comment, and I re-comment, and then I get new stuff, and I check to see if it was changed, but to the visualizations, that's just one piece of the whole part 2.
Right.
So that could be what do you call it?
With
grade?
conditions?
Yeah, well, no, it could be
Or-
the highest level of.
Well, it's part of our checklist.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's
But
part of,
that's,
but it's part of the whole thing.
Right.
And then what John was saying is, you may have 1 or 2 of those that are on this side high. You may have a bunch of them that are fine, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to weigh at the end of it,
Exactly.
what is the real impact to the community? And if it's not tolerable, you could go to the next level. with a full
but
impact,
I
you know,
think,
or-
town engineer, what you are saying is not looking out for the residents and the character of that community. To me, what I'm hearing you say is that you are trying to mitigate things when we are nowhere near the mitigation process.
But I think that that's what the seeker process is designed to do.
If I could jump in, I don't think that's what Todd was saying.
Okay.
No, I was just
It's a
explaining how
mitigation
the secret.
technique so that, so the part 2 is not an evaluation of whether or not a project should be approved or disapproved. The part 2 is designed to evaluate the substantiality, if you will, of the magnitude of the impact, no small, moderate, or large, so that this board as lead agency, when looking at the information provided to date, can decide whether or not you have enough information to decide that there will be no impacts, significant adverse impacts from this proposal, or whether you believe there may be the potential for 1 or more. If there is a potential for 1 or more, the standard is to push it to the full environmental review. So then you go to an environmental impact statement, which is even more robust of a review than what we've done currently, which then evaluates holistically every potential significant adverse impact, so that you can then at the end of that process weigh whether or not that impact, if substantial, is or is not outweighed by other economic, social considerations as the secret standards would dictate, which we would explain at that time. But this isn't, so the visualizations, if you feel like there's more visualizations to request, then that is something you can request if you can't evaluate the impact at all. If you believe, if the developer is saying we can't give you any more, this board needs to decide whether you agree or disagree with the study that's been provided. And if the case is you don't agree, then that's your prerogative as a member of the board that is the lead agency to decide whether you think it is a small impact or it is a large impact, and if it is a large impact, whether it is a potentially significant one. And that goes for every other, we're focusing on the visualizations, but the same would hold true for all 18 questions.
Right.
The veracity of the information provided, whether you believe that's, significant or not, whether you believe it falls under one of those frameworks.
And it would behoove the applicant, to your, point and your desire. Right now, you're only one member of the board, but if the board feels so, they should tell the applicant, we need more information on the visualizations. because we can't make a determination. That's what they need to know, you know. I asked them to do something extra from what was done initially. We tried to go through that at the last meeting. I don't know how successful it was.
The
or not.
geotechnical is another example.
That's
It's
a
the same,
separate
the
issue.
same,
Yeah.
same question. You know, do you feel like the geotechnical in its current state is enough information to evaluate the impact on land? Because as, you know, the town engineer has pointed out, there is only one boring within the project site. Do you feel like that's sufficient, or do you want to have them supplement that geotechnical report to evaluate the first question? Because you may not have enough information yet to do it.
Well, from a local law standpoint, we have this statement. So I am trying to wrap my head around what both of you have said, because the secret process is after our local law. So the documents, the pictures that they provided, I cannot see a difference. I mean, it needs to be color coded. I brought that up to their engineer before. I think there's four pictures, that is it. And we know the planning board took many other pictures from different angles. I would like to see that. I have questions on many of their other reports as well before we even begin the secret questions. So that's where I am at. The decommissioning plan, same thing as Carl brought up. I have many of.
You can have the floor, Phyllis.
I think that we have enough information. I mean, we've been gathering this information for over a year now. We have enough information to at least start the process. The other concern that I have is we are already out of compliance with the timeframes. When we declared that we were the lead agency, we had 20 days to determine whether there was a significant. We have not done that. We declared lead agency, I don't even know how long ago. We need to get this process started, or we could be in jeopardy of having a lawsuit placed against us. I don't see any reason why we cannot at least start with answering the questions. If we get to one of the things that we need more information on, we put that aside, ask the applicant to provide that information. You talk about that at the next meeting. All of these things, we are, to use Jerry's term, we're kicking the can down the road again, putting these people through hoops when we have a significant amount of information now to start answering the questions.
Okay, Councilwoman Wickerham, what's their vegetative plan? What's their vegetative plan? I mean,
It's all in the document.
No,
I can't verbatim.
they don't have one. I went through this. This is.
And what do you mean by vegetative
Getting
plan?
this information to say, we're gonna start this on over 24 hours is not a reasonable request of this board to start going through.
But we've
the
had a
question
lot of
7.
these documentations for months.
Right, but when you start going through the secret questions, you will find out that you have to analyze each one of these reports to answer the questions. The glare analysis. I only got through question 7. That's as far as I
Right,
got after
And I
1:30
guess
in the morning.
I'm wondering where John sent a memo and it had those questions or where are that was my question.
You have
Where is question 7?
His document had links on it and you have to click on them and then
But
you review.
those are all
You have to go through the EAF workbook and the seeker workbook. It is a daunting task.
But why can't we start it?
Because the information to answer those first parts, why would we expect any applicant to say, we'll start even though we don't have all our questions answered?
How are we gonna know what we don't have if we don't start asking those questions?
Because if you've gone through these, they would have jumped out at you already without even looking at the question.
So you already know which documents you don't have.
No, I went through the documents because if you look at Attorney Mancuso's letter of 4 o'clock yesterday. Sorry, I've got lots of these things.
Right.
I then went on and it says
Yeah.
tips for completing part 2.
Yeah.
Very first
Right.
thing we are all supposed to do.
Right.
Review all the information provided in part 1 of the EAF.
Right.
Well, am I the only one in the town engineer that picked up things that had some issues? If you didn't, then the second thing, review any application maps, supporting materials, and the full EAF workbook. It's how many pages? It's way too long to go through. Thank you.
I
But
like
those are our directives. So that's what I did. I followed the directives. And that's when all these little, get granted, they are little bits and pieces. But in order to be able to say, is there no impact, a small impact, a moderate impact, or a large impact? You've got to be able to say, okay, I made my basis based on, there's my moderate impact, or there's no impact. It is torture.
It
is torture.
It is, sorry, but it was torture.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah.
This is
All
only
right.
one project.
I accept your,
You see this?
Yeah.
This is just on the part 1.
yeah.
Yeah, this is one document that they didn't resubmit that I probably should have, I made a note on that TS, whatever, too,
Right.
because this was a document that had everything and included the seeker. Because I couldn't find the new
Right.
seeker because it wasn't submitted in the last 2 submittals. You had to go back to June. So that's why, but this SES, little application, I don't know if Joe is on, he could speak to
Joe
the-
and Chandra are both on.
Yeah, I mean, this is one thing they should update, because that goes along with the first form that gets this whole thing kicked off for the
Right.
second form.
But then the project changed.
Right, then it changed, so this was from the 2, like to John, the mapper is outdated, but the land and all the other natural features haven't changed. It's really the configuration of their, what they did.
Yeah, they ran it on the whole site.
Yeah, and they did it for.
Right,
everything.
but also in reviewing the EAF workbook, it says you're not supposed to just do the site, you're supposed to do surrounding because of migration, moving in and out across properties.
Yeah, the mapper,
They don't, right,
yeah, the
I
mapper
understand the
auto
mapper.
has an auto spatial buffer
Mhm.
built into it. You don't run the mapper outside the project
Right.
site. But the spatial buffer in the mapper itself will bring in information in
Historic
proximity,
information.
historic
For-
preservation.
For the
being
part,
one,
for the part
example,
1, but when you get into part
archaeological.
2, it's all over saying you gotta be talking about
And that,
everything
and the
else.
mapper can be relied upon, but it is not the gospel. So if the board believes an impact exists, then it can be studied beyond what the mapper is providing. And I think last time the oak openings might have been one of
Yeah,
those
'cause
things that we looked at. That was not necessarily a focal point of what the part 1, but because it was so close, we did I think a visual impact assessment, if I'm not mistaken, from oak opening.
Right.
Because you walked down there.
I walked over
I
there.
watched
So,
you.
again, those are the types of things that this board just needs to decide as an agency, whether or not it's a function of missing information or it's a function of evaluation of the significance of the information we have, because some things you may just not be satisfied with, no matter what is done. Other things may not necessarily be a problem, like, critical environmental areas. There are things that aren't ever triggered in the town of Rush, but then there are some things that obviously are a focal point of any application.
Well, exactly, part 1, the EAF mapper says there's no endangered threatened. But you go to the report of the IPAC resort, and it's got bald eagle,
Bald eagle.
right here.
Yeah.
So the EAF mapper didn't pick it up, but it's here. And wetlands type of thing, so.
And all this conversation comes down to my very one focus point. And that is, based on the 3 people from Woodruff Road who have commented to me, everything in that application, everything that we do should follow the rule of transparency. And I don't believe it does at the present time. That's my opinion. And, you know, Amber just cited the vegetation. I'll cite the line of sight obstruction, or not obstruction, but the lack of shielding. You know, those people are talking about all that stuff. And I'm not comfortable with them seeing the results of the planning board, the results of the application submitted. It just doesn't seem right.
Well, then the question is, what does the town want to do about that issue? Do you want to commission a further study of visual impact assessment, including but not limited to whether you want to retain an independent consultant to look at it?
Right.
You don't need to accept
Right.
the developer's visualizations. If you want to hire someone else to do them,
Right.
that's your prerogative. That can be done now, that if you find it's a potentially significant adverse impact, it would be studied in an EIS in the normal course of the secret process as well. It's really, again, it's a function of, does this board believe it has sufficient information on one or more elements of this project? Because if it's the answer is no, then we need to tell the applicant what this board wants, and whether it's consultants or something else.
Yeah, do you want to ask them?
Well, yeah,
If they can do
because,
better on that, because that's a big one. I know it
because,
always has been.
right,
But the question that I hear is, or the thing that I keep hearing is that whatever they have done, anything that they submit is not going to be good enough, because they have tried several times to submit documentation. So I agree with Attorney Mancuso's question. Does the board want to hire its own consultant to do those visualizations? Because I keep hearing over and over again that what they've submitted is not acceptable. Well,
Can I?
go ahead, Chandra, do you want?
I'm sorry, I didn't know if I can or make a comment. I just want to bring a more simplified approach to this. I'm hearing from some of you that there isn't enough documentation, which we acknowledge may be the case. We don't clearly know what that is. However, it seems like the process is we submit documentation, we receive a letter from the town engineer and or the town attorney addressing the documentation, what's missing, what needs to be submitted. Then we go step question by question and address their letter and submit our documentation, which we have done. Now, if after we submitted those documentation in response to the letters of the town attorney and or the town engineer, if you now say what you have submitted is not complete based on the letter that we've asked, you need to complete that submission. Then we go ahead and rectify that based on the letter. But it's, as Councilwoman Amber is saying, there isn't this information, but we have submitted all the information that we believe, and we could be wrong, but at this moment, we believe we've submitted all the information that was asked of us in those letters. So we are a bit confused as to what is missing. If there's missing, as Mr. Mancuso just said, please send us a letter and we'll respond to that and submit what is missing. Like, for example, somebody mentioned there's no vegetation plan. We believe there is one. If it's missing, then we need to be told and we will submit it. But we believe we know there is one, and Joe Hens can address that.
Yeah, just to jump in on the vegetation management plan, that's sheet 6 of 6, and the plan set, excuse me, that was submitted in September. So that's been provided to the board.
Right.
It also should have been a part of the operations maintenance plan, but it is in the plan set.
Right. And Chandra and Joe, yes, it is in your solar operation and maintenance manual. But when I flip to that, it says vegetative management plan. And again, I was doing this in preparation for tonight. Okay, so the directive was given to us. So this isn't something that I would have analyzed, months ago, because I didn't know when that directive would be given. So when I turn to the page, and I know you're on Zoom, so maybe you can see the map. My question is, how is that a maintenance plan? You're simply saying you're going to be, putting pollinator seeds in and things like that. But to me, that's not and maybe I'm not interpreting right, that's not a management plan, because in the part 1 EAF, you say you're not going to use chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, but I don't find anywhere how you're going to maintain the vegetation. So
In the operations and maintenance manual, there's a schedule that includes frequency of maintenance, replacement of trees if they die within a year or two of planting. And there's extra details we can add on the vegetation management plan if there's specific notes on management that you want on that plan, but we believe all that information has been provided already.
Part 1 of the EAF, it says you're not going to use pesticides and herbicides, but on page 10 of your operations maintenance manual 2.2 weed abatement, you say you're going to remove all invasive weeds and spray where necessary to prevent future growth. So being an environmental science teacher, I hear the word spray, but the EAF one says you're not going to use any sort of chemicals. That's where the disconnect for me to understand, to have a good knowledge base, that if a resident were to say, okay, Mrs. Corbin, explain this to me, then I could say, yep, it's right here. I'm not going to explain it. It's not my job. This is what they have said. And right now, that's wildlife and pest management 2.6, maintain site to address problematic wildlife matters, including but not limited to nest and hive removal. So again, as needed type. So when I think of a vegetative maintenance plan or property inspection maintenance, maybe I'm interpreting it as a different versus what you in the industry would put together. So maybe it's
Sure. Sure.
It's not.
So when you have questions about, and as another council member opined, when you have questions about the documentations we've submitted, which is voluminous, then that's why we have these meetings, to answer those questions. And if there are holes or gaps, and I don't know how you identify those holes or gaps, I assume the process is that the town attorney and or the town engineer will write a letter to us mentioning what those holes are and what additional information you require. And then we will provide that, just as what you're asking at this moment. But so when we submit documentation that you've asked, that the law asks us to provide for an application for an SUP or a site plan, we provide that documentation to the best of our ability. But if there are holes and more information needed, you write to us and we'll provide that. But that obviously, if we make a mistake, we will try to rectify it, but that cannot be an endless process, which is what this is becoming. I'm not saying we are not at fault in some instances where we haven't provided the information we should have provided, but it is clear it's becoming an endless process. So help us to bring this closer to a solution by telling us what do you want us to do, so we would provide that information.
Is the best way Attorney Mancuso and Engineer Ewell and the town board, do I put it in writing of what my research showed me last night?
Well, that's a very good question, because I would ask both Chandra and Joe, when you look at the local law under number 10 regarding landscape buffers, then you look at the planning board report under H10. How are you going to make those two things compatible?
One second, let us look at H10.
The resident who is already complaining about that wants to look at documentation. I want them to see that there is some solution provided.
But sure, and we should respond to that with documentation. but we've provided this many months ago, this documentation. I assume that you've gotten late to it because you could have reviewed this many months ago and asked us all these questions, and we could have responded with all that information. Nevertheless, are you in a stage where you are identifying more in reading through the documentation we've provided, identifying information that you need, additional information that you need, and asking us to provide that, which we will promptly do in a few days. But what our concern is that you're asking these things of us now when you've had the documentation for a long time. Nevertheless, we can't go back. Please let us know what we need to provide, and we will provide it promptly in days, few days, even one day.
That's fair.
But we are a private business. It is all private. Almost any business is located in a town in this country, isn't it? There is nothing but a town where businesses are located. There is a reason, and the businesses are the underpinnings of the greatness this country has. That's why we are the greatest economy in the world, because of all these businesses. We are one such business. We are not here just to do good for just ourselves. In the process of doing good for ourselves, we do good for the country, we do good for the town, the state, etc., etc. So if this process takes forever and a long time, if you don't like solar projects, you should put a moratorium forever and say no solar project. But if you do, if you ask of us what you need, we will respond immediately. That's the best we can do. But please help us move this process along much more rapidly than it is going right now. I grant that part of it is our fault.
Thank you. Anything else?
I want to know what I can do to help,
Well,
help that.
Chandra just asked, can we write them a letter?
Mhm.
And can we identify what it is that we have angst over so that they can provide us with
Better or enhanced.
What's that?
Better or enhanced material.
So maybe ask the town engineer and Mr. Town attorney. You've written us a letter, couple letters so far, and this is how the process goes. And we've responded with documentation. Is it not complete, or did you not get feedback from the town board and at an appropriate time for you to get feedback to us so we can respond with the information? The last submittal was based on what you had asked us to submit. Is that not complete? Is that not enough?
Well, I think on the visuals, to Amber's point, we went through that in November. And it was presented in all the responses. And Joe went through the whole letter. And I think the majority of the items are here. But to Amber's trying to say is the visuals, I think, is a point where she can't make a determination on what you've provided, if it's accurate or not.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What I have noticed through the visuals process so far is that it is a very subjective process. We will endeavor to do our best to give you what you want on the visuals, but this process could go forever. And please tell us what you would like, and we'll get it to you as quickly as possible in the next few days. If what's missing, if you're saying we want a line of sight or this picture, or you want to see visual. However, in the broader scheme of things, we know that it is impossible to meet that standard for any solar farm anywhere, that you cannot see anything. So ultimately, 100%, and this came up a lot in the planning board meetings. How do you interpret 100% screening? If it means that an eye cannot see anything from anywhere, that's an impossible standard to maintain, unless you are sitting in a valley and we put up buildings around it. So we've tried our best. And by the way, you've given Werner some leeway on that, because I don't think they've screened their project 100% as some people seem to interpret. So you've already set precedents, and rightfully so, because it's impossible. Even in an ideal site which is flat and you put trees up, I don't think it's possible. because of wetlands, there might be wetlands, you can't put trees in the wetlands, et cetera. So
I just want records on there saying, we don't want this to go on forever. What we wanted, an application that we can defend to our constituents why we voted a certain way. It's as simple as that.
I 100% understand and agree.
Is Chandra's Joe on? It's Amber.
Yeah, he is.
Joe,
Yeah, hi, Amber.
quick question. Acoustic test protocol for Sun 2000 HA string inverter. This isn't anything that is for your project, correct? It's just a.
It's provided as an equivalent to, the inverters that we would be using on this project. If the project were to be approved and moved towards construction, there'd be detailed electrical plans provided. And at that point, the specific equipment would be selected. But they're all approximately similar. And you see similar sound impacts for the different inverters. So we provide that Sun inverter as the equivalent.
Well, it's just the tables were blank, so I just didn't know if it was similar to the NYSERDA decommissioning thing, that really this isn't something I could just put to the side in that sense.
It shouldn't be blank. I can take a look at that. I'm not sure if that was a print error, what the problem was. But the digital one should have information in the tables. Generally, what that document shows is that the inverters at full load, right at the inverter, generate approximately 55 decibels, which is equivalent to the sound of a running refrigerator. Yeah. Yeah, I can't see the image on Zoom, but yeah, maybe there was a print issue. If there's a problem with that document, I'll make a note to send additional copies of that for the board members.
Maybe I'm just interpreting it wrong, that's all. All right, so moving forward, Supervisor, what do we need to do?
I think that we should accept Chandra's offer to write him a letter and detail where we find a problem so that he can resubmit without a problem.
Can we have a time frame on that? Because we've asked for.
I will have my letter
supervisor
by Friday, because I have
for other things that
But
have
there's gonna be
taken
more
over
stuff
months.
identified. If we started the secret process part 2, we could have identified further
Even
things
more.
more for him to answer. And now it's just gonna get delayed further.
That would be our request, that you start the seeker process. This whole system is obviously very transparent to the public. Somebody mentioned from the public earlier that there are secret meetings, none that we know of. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. This whole process, they are listening to everything we are saying right now, including the fact what you're saying, that there's something missing. You are openly saying there's something missing and asking us for that information, and we are telling you openly we will provide it. So there's no secret, or there's no secret about this to the public. Neither do you have to make decisions based on missing information, because you are openly asking for it, and we are saying we'll provide it. But it's we would defer to you, we respect you, and we would respectfully request that you start the seeker process, identify any material, and we will respond within a day or two at the most.
I think that's acceptable. What do you think?
I'll read it again. Tips for completing part 2. Review all the information provided in part 1, the EAF. Review all applications, maps, supporting materials, and that go along with the workbook. So the number of questions that Attorney Mancuso sent us at 4 o'clock yesterday is impossible to be able to go through tonight. In my opinion, it took me 3 hours just to cross-reference for question 7.
So I have a quick question on that. Then is your process prior to starting seeker, the town attorney sends a list of questions to the town and they have to review them and then start the seeker process? If that's the case in your process, do you allow some time from the time he sends his questions to the time you start the seeker? Or should he provide that same thing to us prior so we ensure you have complete information? I'm a bit confused when you say you didn't have time.
Well, a town board process and procedure, and Councilwoman Wickerham and I have argued for this for a year, that she's
don't have
laughing. I tried.
I
This
know, we
board would
tried.
not go
I
along
know.
with me.
I know.
That we would get all documents that we were going to be discussing at least by the Friday before. We tried 48 hours before, so that we could do our homework.
But we provided all the documents much before this meeting, even a week earlier. Are you saying you got them late or?
Saying to go through the part 2 seeker questions.
Oh.
And making a determination if it is small, moderate, or large. For how we did this for Forefront, Chandra. That is what we did. We all did our work on our own before the meeting, and we came in and Attorney Mancuso ran us through the questions. It did take at least 3 meetings, I think it was.
But the time before the meeting that you reviewed it, you had much more time, you're saying, because you're saying you only got this yesterday.
I'm saying I knew which questions we would be looking at
Yeah,
Okay.
in advance.
yeah, it was broken up into 3 meetings.
Right,
the
3
third,
meetings,
third,
so we
third.
knew which parts we were doing each of the meetings, or Attorney Mancuso, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, how best you recollect how we did that. You actually did a workshop kind of for us on
Yeah, I
it.
tried to break it up in terms of picking categories that I thought, not doing all of them that would all take the longest in one meeting, but sort of sprinkling them amongst some that were more complex than others and sort of trying to gauge, a reasonable allocation. But obviously, one size doesn't fit all. So, I mean, if we need to do it, if we need to allocate the time in a different way, then we can do that. It was only a suggestion in terms of the questions that we would look at tonight. The information I provided obviously is the procedure holistically, but wasn't intended to suggest that we would do everything I said at once.
Attorney Mancuso, you know me better than that. If you send me something, I'm gonna try to do that. So that's when I cried uncle. I said, it's just no way I could get.
Right. No, this is the last thing I would want to say. I don't want to waste any more of your valuable time. We have provided what was asked of us many days ago or weeks ago. So the rest we would have to leave to you. We were under the impression you would start the seeker. We did our part. If there were holes in what we provided, we expected that you would ask us and we would provide it. We haven't been asked. So we therefore assume the seeker process would start. So I'm not sure where we are involved in the delay in this process. So that's what we request, that you start the process and ask us what else you need from us.
Amber's going to continue her letter, and you obviously reach out to me, and I'll give you all the input I have on everything I've read through. And then the big thing is the visualizations. I'll go back to it. So
right,
that one's coming. You guys should start thinking about a plan to present whatever's.
I think we need.
If what was submitted isn't acceptable, and again, to Councilwoman Wickerham's point, Amber said she didn't understand or doesn't think it's acceptable. But that's one person on the board. John and I are just asking for stuff and you're sending it in. And then the board has to make the ultimate decision. We'll offer a recommendation without too much opinion. It's got to be you guys decide. So.
Sure.
So Chandra, is Joe, can you do anything better? I mean, the line of sights were tough to understand. I asked for the colorization so that maybe we could see
Yeah.
just areas where there would be a view shed open.
You know what we'll do? We absolutely can do better. I'm not looking at the actual documents right now. I'm just speculating that we can do better because you're saying they're not enough. But we'll hold Werner as the standard, similar to what they have provided, we can provide the same.
Okay.
So
That's fair.
as best as possible, we could probably provide the same. Joe,
That's-
correct me if I'm wrong. We probably could, right?
Yeah, I think we have all the information we need to put together a package similar to Werner. I think it's a matter of maybe adding a little bit more detail and then packaging up what's already been submitted with a better explanation, maybe work in a narrative that explains our methodology when we went out and took photos, software we use. So yeah, I think if we use Werner as a template and we add a little more detail to what we've already submitted into a complete package, I think we'll be in good shape.
Sure, we could do that very quickly.
Yep.
However, again, we go back to the same thing, which is if you could start the process, that would only take us a few days to provide to you. But if that is absolutely needed to start the process, then there's not much we could do. I guess we would have to wait.
You comfortable with that?
Amber submits her letter.
I
We get as
think-
much information as we can and then move forward
Right.
at the next
At the
meeting with the
next meeting,
speaker.
right.
I think I'm ready to start it, but we've already wasted 45 minutes of time that we could have been going through some of it.
I will argue back. It was not a waste of time. It was my research. It was my homework, and I felt it was important to state
That's your opinion.
that it wasn't a waste of time.
Right.
That it was, in your opinion.
Right.
Okay.
Can we put it on the next agenda?
Can we clear,
Thank you.
only do this then?
For you, Phyllis, I'll try very hard.
So that we can get a good portion of this done?
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
It's up to the board how many hours you.
No, we cannot get through the
I
entire
don't think you're gonna
sequence.
be able to.
No,
But I'm
no.
saying a good portion of it.
Can,
She wants to get it started.
no, I am okay with that as long as there is a commitment to everything on the visualization. But can we please, even though 6 things would be a lot to get through potentially, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion.
I had proposed, I proposed like 5, what is it, 18? So I think, I proposed 5.
Oh, you chose 5, right?
For tonight. We can do 5. I could pick a different 5. Again,
No, don't, keep 7, I've got 7 down. So I guess, Attorney Mancuso, to educate our 2 new board members of what you did for, at least for myself, when I reached out to you for Forefront, the workbook, here are the questions, here's those,
this
yeah,
thing,
it's online,
yes.
Yep. it's
but
on
it
there.
is a lot of work.
Do you want to read the visualization question so Chandra could hear it? I mean, it's just.
But the visualization is from the law, so, I mean, I don't want to go
He
down
has
that
that.
road yet until we have
He
the
has
information.
Yeah, and I may separately need to advise the board on
Yeah.
that too, outside of an attorney-client
Okay.
contact. Yeah,
So I'm okay with that. So I will by Friday put my best that I have here. And what about the visualization, town engineer, Todd Buell?
What about it?
That, as far as the delineation of the colors, are we going to request a separate?
Well, that's what we asked them, so they could hear this, because I know that is a
That's
big
right.
thing.
Yeah,
And for the
Everything
neighbors,
else is
character
engineered
of the neighborhood, right?
and probably be
already-
dealt with,
He's
but
already agreed that he will
He'll
do
do
better.
something, yeah, so that's
Yeah.
up to them, the best foot forward and
Yeah.
hopefully present it so that the board can understand and make decisions.
I wish you could go back and do the glare study in the middle of summer instead of February when there's no sun at 4 o'clock, but that's just my little pet peeve.
Yeah, the glare study actually uses a FAA tool that takes the height of the sun all throughout the year. So it doesn't really matter when you do the glare study. It's considering all times a year.
So it's not a physical study, it's an electronic study. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
it's a
saying?
computer. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a computer program.
So
Yeah.
we didn't go out in February and do the studies.
No.
Yep.
It'd be comfortable. Everybody okay?
Mhm.
And we will put this on the agenda for the 22nd. And Chandra, if you want to submit any upgrades between now and then, do so.
We will also communicate with the town engineer and know what to submit, and we will. We know clearly what was asked us of today, but if there's something additional, sure. We will also try to cross the T's and dot the I's, so.
Just be aware that he is sick, so go easy on him.
Okay, all right. We are kind of disappointed that you can't get through even a few questions today on seeker, at least start the process, but again, we respect your decision.
All right, anyone else say anything? And we will move on. We will move on to the public comment period. Remember, this is the public comment period where you can ask questions, you can expect an answer. We ask you to be civil and respectful to those around you. And I will start that comment period off with responding to Chris Giordano's comment earlier about the linear trail. The last board meeting, we approved a resolution for our highway department to participate in a shared services agreement with the county Department of Public Works or Transportation, whatever. That means is our highway department will maintain the trail, the vegetation's on the side of the trail mainly, but also some basic ditching and trenching and tile installation to keep the trail from eroding in the spots where it erodes in. Those services will be paid for by the county.
Right. Can I add something to that?
You sure can.
No, the reason that the town had to enter into a shared services agreement is because that Lehigh Trail is a Monroe County, it is considered a Monroe County park. It's with the county park system. So it's their obligation to maintain it. But because they did not have the workforce, they contracted with a shared service agreement with every town that the trail goes through.
Thank you. Okay. Would anyone like to make a comment in the second period? We'll start off with this room. Yes, please state your name and address.
Catherine Hankins, 2353 Pinnacle Road. First, I am very much pro-solar. I want to have solar farms in appropriate locations, but I'm very concerned about what I heard our applicants say is that it is impossible to meet the specifications of our law. In tier 2, it says that it's as much as you can. You don't have to have complete screening, but it says twice in tier 3, twice. So to me, we are leading an applicant on, giving them and continuing to review it, and now crossing the bridge into a seeker, which is a mitigation process. We've been doing this, he's absolutely right, we've been doing this for over a year. But we have to either look at our law and say this law has merit. It took 2 years to produce the solar law in our town, 2 years. And we went back and forth. And then the acceptance of a law that said twice complete screening to accommodate some of the concerns that neighbors had. Didn't have to say that. And the law doesn't say first come, first serve. In fact, the law also says only 150 acres. I thought that was a real concern, because what about me? Maybe I buy 200 acres and I want to have a solar farm. What about me? Why can you get it because you came in first? So I see a lot of problems with our solar law. And if we have an applicant, he said it the last meeting, he said it's impossible to do complete screening. Impossible. The planning board, I read the planning board review. I was actually at that planning board meeting, and I heard again the planning board members say it's impossible. It can't happen. It cannot happen. So the zoning board of appeals, as far as I know, the town board, as far as I know, cannot just arbitrarily put the law over on the back table and continue a process that the law doesn't allow. To me, it seems like we have to stop, amend the law, if that's what people want, or go back to revisit it for what the intention was. It wasn't to have, and from my understanding, Forefront met all the obligations, planned 2 rows of 14-foot trees, and I don't see how we're in this situation where we are taking money from an applicant, just exactly what the applicant said, continuing to bring them in and ask these questions when the real issue is, can it meet the minimum criteria of our solar tree law? So I have that question. How do you get around it? For somebody to say it's impossible to meet the standard of our law. Don't we have to change the law? What are we going to do about it? How do you possibly reconcile that with the neighbors who have been told that we will live by law? Is it worth something, or that was a waste of paper? So that is a question. I really would like an answer, because it's a concern to me that we don't have a standard for who comes to our table to apply this law. So what's the answer?
I don't think any one of us have an answer tonight. I think you bring up a good point, a point that should be pondered, but I don't think any of us have an answer tonight. I think that our attorney might have a comment.
What particular aspect of that comment would you like me to address? I don't want to say, again, I don't want to speak on behalf of the town board.
Well, I would, exactly.
Right.
I don't think you should, but
Right.
you certainly should be able to comment to the board who's here of whether or not that's a reasonable thought to consider.
Well, I guess I'm going to ask which part of Ms. Hankins' comment do you wish for me to address? Because depending on what it is, I may tell you I would in an attorney-client setting rather than in an open meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is that the applicant just said it's impossible to achieve complete screening. He also said that it was impossible for Forefront to achieve complete screening. I didn't believe that. It didn't come up in any kind of the seeker review. In fact, it said because it's flat, it could make it. It never came up that I recall. But we just heard an applicant, and I heard him say that 2 weeks ago. It's impossible. They can't make that they can't meet that criteria. To me, it either pushes us to have to change the law, which took quite a few years, and really, when you look at the law, it says tier 2 allows visual that you don't have to screen it first, but tier 3 was intentionally put in 2 times, and it was discussed so that it would be meet the criteria for our town to make sure that solar was not a visual distraction or an interruption to the people who live nearby in terms of their property values. So it was a really robust discussion. I mean, whether it all ended up in the minutes because we didn't have audio and video at those times, but it was month after month after month. And that was what was accepted. That was what was passed, 150 acres. And I just think we have to revisit the law. We have to revisit this law to make sure that it is just exactly what the applicant said, open and transparent. They've been coming back to the table over and over again. Why wouldn't we be open and transparent with them to say our law says that we have
complete screening. That's the term, twice. I don't get it. I said it back earlier in the late summer. I heard two people bring it up last week and nobody's getting any answers. So when can you you're going to do some homework. What's the answer for that? What is the answer? How do you get around that law? How do you get around that specific laws? I suppose it's like the 10 Commandments. There must be some kind of way out of it. But I think that the town board has to look at that and say, this does not meet the criteria for the law. How are we going to do that? Unless I'm missing what the applicant just said. I left you all speechless. Okay. Thank you for all your hard work, but I just find it difficult to understand how we keep nursing this program along and taking the applicants' money and taking their time and energy, when to me, the issue has to go to whether it goes to an appellate board. I don't see how it becomes a use variance. I don't see how it becomes an area variance. I don't see how we can entertain it, because we do not have anything in the law that says any applicant can come for anything. Maybe it doesn't belong there. I don't know.
Thank you.
I will have to advise the board as to those issues in the attorney-client setting.
Okay. Bill Darren is on Zoom supervisor. Bill, if you'd like to unmute yourself, turn your video on, give us your name and address again, please.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, how you doing, Jerry? William Darren, 2097-2107 Rushmenden Road. Quick show of hands. Anybody there ever run your own business, pay taxes as a business person, employ people? Anybody?
Do apartments qualify?
Well, yeah, kind of, because you ran a business. Yes, you pay taxes. Yeah, all right. You actually worked for yourself. All right, so I got this great cartoon from the far side. It says Einstein finally discovers that time equals money. It's a picture of Einstein drawing all equations on a board. It's pretty much what got drilled into your head. As an entrepreneur and a businessman, at some point, you can bait all you want, and at some point they just ain't going to bite. And, as nice as you can be to give them everything that they want in order to get the job, in order to get the money, in order to get what you want, which is a cost, which is a living, that ain't going to happen. Even though you know that they want what you have, even though that that they need what you have, they're not going to buy. So what do? Do you keep going? Do you keep pushing? Do you keep trying? You move on. You put their number in the Rolodex. Maybe they'll call you back. You remember what you put in. I mean, it's no different the size of the business. Helios is an enormous company, huge, with lots of engineers. I'm sure they got projects all over the place. I'm sure there's people gnawing at their bit to install what they have and get things set up so that their communities can have solar power or whatever it is that they provide as a service in their line of business. And I've looked at their site. They do all sorts of kinds of stuff. So if it's that versus the town of Rush, which seems to just throw up a roadblock after another, and I don't know. Is it that the paperwork processing there is so absolutely horrendous that stuff they sent 20 copies of? Didn't I hear that right? Helios guys, you can raise your hand and nod if you're right. Didn't you say you sent 20 copies to Rush in August of some huge proposal? And didn't we hear in November, I believe, that you didn't see any of them? Is there a giant black hole in the Rush Town Hall that makes 20 copies disappear between August and November? I mean, no offense, guys, just stand up and say it. Just say, we don't want it. We have, some number of constituents that absolutely do not want what you're offering. Stop wasting their time. It's simple. And it's the same with any of these things that are commercial. It's the same way with Mr. Moore, right? The dude is not going to spend a lot of time working on paperwork and documentation to answer every one of your questions to the point where he begins to realize that you don't want what he's selling. It's costing him money to talk to engineers or to write up documents or take his time to do it. You either want what he's got and you work with him to do it, or just come out and tell him straight up that you don't want it. Unless, of course, lawyer Mancuso, that's illegal and everyone should go to jail, in which case I'm terribly sorry if I'm out of line. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else like to comment?
Carl Ast is on Zoom unless there's someone in here that would like to speak for him. Would you like Carl to unmute himself, Supervisor?
Let Carl unmute himself.
All right, Carl.
All right. Carl Ost, 100 Woodruff Road. I think it's interesting, these comments. But I have to say that there's a level of incompetence on Helios' part as well as the engineer's part. And I've been noting these inconsistencies since last spring. I suggested to the planning board and to the town many months ago that they should follow the forefront example. And to date, they have not followed the forefront example. I'm looking at their landscaping plan. I see 2 rows of trees. If you look at the forefront plan, it was zigzagged, two lines of trees and closely spaced. As far as, they chose this site knowing there was a pipeline right of way that goes through it. They chose this site knowing there was a pipeline right of way going through it. They've had 24 months to figure out how to screen a pipeline going through the middle of their project. And now they're blaming the town on being resistant. No, you could turn that landscaping, go into the site and reduce the visual. Do I have, does some other engineer have to tell them what to do, how to do their job? This is inconceivable that we're allowing in someone like this that is not able to do their job properly, that they're blaming us for the process. They came in with a 8 megawatt 2 sites, and they wanted to do the whole thing covering the whole property. So knowing that the visuals were not there, they did not review the solar law to apply to their project. They are the incompetent ones. I also noticed on their plan, the axial direction of the solar panels is north, the axis is north-south. Does that mean that the tilting of these panels is going to be east to west? So that I just, that doesn't make sense to me. Maybe they're not on to explain that, but there are as many engineering ways that they could reduce the visual on this without changing their plan drastically. And I can't understand why people can't figure that out. And also, Councilperson Lang, Councilperson Wickerham, the irony is that you support Governor Hochul in the plan to cover New York State with solar panels. Just so you know, it doesn't make any sense to me why you would cover prime farmland adjacent to the Genesee River, one of the resources of our community, with solar panels and feeding into a transmission system that doesn't directly benefit electricity in the town. Now, the Helios project, I agree, is a good site because it's adjacent to the 390, but it has to be resolved in their issues. A forefront, again, in the 390 corridor. Why would you want to add more solar panels that still do not have a cost-effective or accurate anything documented on recycling them, or when we're all done? They're saying that we're going to do that. Did you know that the wind turbines, those blades cannot be recycled? They have to be cut up and buried. Now, so renewable energy takes energy to make the renewables, and we don't have a plan on how to just decommission it at this time properly. So let's cut down on the irony comments, and just we need to have Helios do a competent job in addressing the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Can I respond?
You sure can.
Mr. Ast?
Yes.
You accused me
It's
of.
Ast. By the way, it's Ast.
Fine. You accused me of something that is absolutely not true. Supporting Governor Hochul's initiative?
Yeah, you guys have said, according to Governor Hochul, we want to do this. You said that.
Have I ever said that?
Yes.
So until you have proof that I support Governor Hochul's initiative, I would kindly
Last-
ask that you were.
Yeah, the
you
last
were-
meeting you said that
No, I
solar was
didn't.
something that Governor Hochul's is promoting, and you're in favor of that.
No, you may have heard me say that it is her initiative. Did you hear me say that I was in support of her initiative?
That you're in support of Horseshoe and solar and this initiative, yes.
No, I did not say that. So.
I don't think that this forum is intended to have a personal debate or difference of opinion.
Well, or a
We
person,
should
an
be discussing
accusation.
business.
An accusation against one of the board members that is absolutely not true. And two, what I do believe in is that we should be letting the residents of this town make determinations on how the properties that they have can be used within our laws, within our codes. And Helios has submitted an application for a solar farm in our.
It's not a
tier-
farm.
Well, pardon me, I will use the term farm.
It's not a farm.
I will use the term farm. And it is within our law to be looking at approving things. So that is what I do believe in. When someone comes with an application before the board asking to do something on their own private property that is within the scope of our law, I am going to consider it.
Thank you to both of you. Anyone else want to comment on the public comment
We
session?
have one more, Supervisor, nothing to do with this topic.
Thank God.
Thank goodness.
Okay, everyone, come on. Be nice. It is Shannon. Would you care to unmute yourself, turn your video on, give us your name and address, please?
Hi, my name is Shannon Wisnowski. My address is 5 Forks Road in Honey Falls. My camera is not currently working. My question is, when are we going to vote on the water districts?
The water district survey will be coming out soon. And you will be able to voice your, or not voice, but write your opinion on that survey. And we will react to that survey very shortly thereafter.
What does soon mean? Like within the next month, 5 months, 6 months?
I would like to think that it would be within the first week of January or before.
Okay, thank you.
Understand your frustration with the water situation. Some of us know that there's a tremendous amount of people with water frustrations, and it's our intent to do whatever we can to try to set some of those frustrations aside. But it takes a lot of time. It's not as simply as the supervisor saying to the highway department, run a water line down there. They need water. It doesn't work like that.
And I understand that. That's why I asked about forming the 2-house district if necessary to you previously in emails. And I hadn't really received anything further on that. I know you'd rather see if it could be put in for the whole community. And I understand that. I just know that some people like myself have no water that's proper and is ruining currently our house, my children's teeth. We can't cook with it. We can't do anything with it. As you saw, I sent a letter from Culligan saying that it's not even treatable anymore. So we would just like to see what the town can do to help us out as far as even putting a district in for just, or not, extending it for our houses or, for ourselves, for the people that really are in serious need of it.
We have not veered away from our intent to do anything we can to find a resolution to the problems of water in the town of Rush. Thank you for your patience. Is anyone else?
No, that is it, Supervisor.
Anyone here? Then I would like to offer the board an opportunity. My attorney-client privilege business doesn't have to be conducted tonight. I don't think that the subject that was brought up earlier has to be conducted tonight.
I would like that subject discussed tonight.
then we'll stay and have it. We are going to go into an attorney-client privilege session.
I think we can adjourn, we should adjourn. the
Adjourn
meeting.
first, yeah.
We will adjourn.
Yep.
We will, just like giving my speech the other night I had two people telling me what to say when I was about to say it. That's okay.
It's a Christmas.
Sometimes I forget and I need a reminder. So thank you, John. We will adjourn this public meeting and go into an attorney-client privilege session. We will not come out to discuss any business. We will not come out to make any great announcements. We will come out to adjourn.
We're gonna
We're
now
adjourned right
adjourn.
now.
Supervisor.
Well, adjourn from our,
The
No,
whole
We're
meeting.
adjourned the
okay.
meeting, We're closing the meeting.
we're closing the meeting right now.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We can meet right in here,
Does the
can't we?
board need to come in here?
No.